Being eager to learn, but most of the teachers just seem completely uninterested in education. One of my teachers, Miss Manley, has been particularly hard to work with. She was quiet at first, but she showed some potential. I thought maybe she just needed a little time to come out of her shell, but as the weeks went by, she just sat there listlessly at her desk, never talking or participating. It just makes you feel so helpless.
For more on this story, check this week's Onion Review.
This is the Onion News Network.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. You can join the show and you can bring up anything you want to discuss here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Joining you here in the studio tonight, it's Ian.
Aria?
A little bit of an update on the Crypto 6 case. In my case, met with my attorney today, and we got the order from the judge on reducing my... Do you even call it bail conditions? Pre-sentencing conditions, I guess. It's not really bail at this point.
It's yeah, I don't know.
Pre-sentencing conditions.
I guess they do have some sort of terminology. It was pre-trial supervised release.
Yeah.
That was what I was on, and that was what you were on prior to the trial. But of course, this is post-trial.
Post-conviction, post-trial. Anyway, so the question was, hey, look, I'm not a problem here for the probation officer. Yep. Can we just go ahead and reduce the conditions, which I had home confinement. I don't think, were you ever on home confinement?
I was never under home confinement. No, right. They were far more worried about my internet usage than they were where I physically were. I mean, I've been all over the United. I've done more traveling since
that's true.
Been on supervised release than probably at any other point in my life.
So that has been granted. I'm now under what they call a curfew instead of home confinement. So instead of having to put in... So this has all actually happened before to me.
Did they ever put you back on the ankle monitor?
No, thankfully no.
Okay, well,
I have the new version, which is the app that buzzes me 3 times a day, and I have to take a picture where I'm at.
Okay,
within 15 minutes.
A little bit less restrictive. I mean, technically, you have to stay within 15 minutes of your house, I suppose.
Which isn't bad. I mean, that's fine. We don't walk the dog crazy lengths of distance. So yeah, it lets me walk the dog without any real issue, and it's not a clumsy device that's wrapped to my ankle 24 hours a day. So from that perspective, it was a step forward. But we went through all this before, where previously I had an ankle monitor on. We had to ask to have that removed, and it took it took a year before we were able to do the ask, and then we did, and it was granted. And then this time around,
there's also the fact that you had. Your monitoring software was removed at one point. You were allowed to actually have unrestricted, well, not unrestricted, but unmonitored access to internet and computers and stuff for like a very short 3-week-ish or so
basically
period.
During the trial.
Yeah.
Like a week before the trial.
Which obviously it makes sense. Like, hey, we're trying this guy. None of the digital surveillance that we've done in him was remotely useful to anyone. It was just a hassle. So can we get that off there? But like, as soon as the trial was over, the prosecutor was like, hey, can we get that back on there? Like,
and it's back.
What are you going to do with internet access, man?
Yeah,
you can't leave the country. So anything that you could theoretically do is dead in the water already.
Yeah, so that's back. And so the restrictions are back, but we did reduce it to a curfew today. But it's not as good of a curfew as what I had last time, because I had out until 11 o'clock at night last time, and now it's only 7 o'clock at night. But, hey, it is what it is. So.
What time do you get to leave? Because there's like a window, right? It's like 6 a.m.? Okay.
Yeah, which was 9 a.m. Now it's 6 a.m. But. So, that probably means I'll be able to go up to the Porcupine Freedom Festival for at least one day, kind of like last year where we went up and I gave a speech and hung out with people for the day and then went back. We'll have to leave earlier, but there's a special motion in that my lawyer filed today called an expedited motion, because normally when you file a motion, the prosecution has 2 weeks to respond to the motion before the judge then can rule on it.
Yeah, and in 2 weeks, I'll be packing up to go to Fork Fest, right?
So we need this thing decided quickly, and I guess, expedited is a thing if the lawyers don't do it too often or whatever. I don't know what the rules are around it, but it hasn't really happened in this case. So Sisti filed an expedited motion to specifically get permission to allow me to go to the Porcupine Freedom Festival and Fork Fest. And, I can check in from the app there or whatever it is I got to do.
My gut tells me that it shouldn't be an issue, and I don't think the judge will have an issue with it. He did say he wasn't inclined to let you leave the district, which means
not what I'm asking for.
Right, which means the state of New Hampshire. For those who have never played around in the federal court system, they call them districts instead of states, but what he means is the state of New Hampshire. And technically, to take 91 up to Lancaster, you do go in and out of Vermont, but that's not even necessary. You could take a different route there.
I could go up through New Hampshire, sure.
Yeah, if that's even an issue to them. But I doubt that would be an issue. And the judge has proven to be very open-minded and very reasonable.
He seems to be
in these matters.
Or he wants Ian to run.
Oh, and Mark's
there
with us, by the way. Sorry, I forgot to join the room. Thank you.
Yeah, the service in this place sucks.
As I understand it, the judge wants to appear to be liberal and progressive. That's what I've been told.
Okay. He was appointed by George Bush or something, though.
Progressive was the word that was used, not liberal.
I see.
But, he does seem to be more... I don't know anything about his politics, but
Me neither.
He does seem to be less law and order, bang the gavel, you're all guilty, hang 'em, than what I would expect of most federal judges.
Well, we'll see how it goes with this. The motion's in, and within hours of it being filed, the judge had issued an order saying the prosecution must reply by tomorrow.
That's what suggests that the judge is going to be okay with it, because he gave them 24 hours to respond to this. And that suggests to me that
may
he's
be standard, though. That might be a standard expedited thing. Anyway, what, Mark?
So this doesn't have anything to do with you going to Talker's new media seminar, right?
Oh, no, I wasn't going to ask for that because I'm specifically not allowed to leave the state, so I'm not going to ask for permission for that.
Are you not allowed to leave the state or New England? I mean,
the state. This is the District of New Hampshire.
So I know it's a federal court judge, and in this case, it's the District of New Hampshire. But question, point of order. It is the First Circuit or something like that, right? So wouldn't you be able to stay within the First Circuit?
No, the restrictions on me are specifically the District of New Hampshire.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's worth fighting the judge and making him angry.
No, that's not worth it.
Violating the letter, the spirit, but not the letter of what he wrote in order to go to this convention in Long Island that I don't think you care much about in the first place.
I mean, I like the convention, but it isn't going to change much whether we go or not. I mean, I think Mark pointed out, somebody pointed out, I don't know who this person was, Mark, but you shared something with us earlier that some people are kind of tired of the repetitiveness of the Talkers Convention, and to be fair, it does have that tendency. They've been telling the talk show hosts the same thing for years, you got to get on the internet, guys. You got to. That's basically
it's 120-year-old technology. Of course, it's repeats.
You got to get on the internet.
Well, I've never been to this thing, but if I get permission to go, I suspect that will make it a little bit different because I doubt they've ever had an openly trans person there.
I cannot recall ever seeing that. No, do you?
I don't recall ever seeing it.
Yeah,
no.
I want to see the conservatives.
You attract more attention than your average openly trans person.
Yeah, that's by design.
They've had Al Franken there, and I suspect he's probably put a wig on at some point in his life, but no, that's about it.
I want to see the conservative reactions to my predecessor. I looked at the Heavy 100 for 2022 for talk radio at least, and they weren't all Republicans from what I could tell. Charlotte
wasn't it 2023? 2023 out, right?
Not that I found.
It's got to be coming out real soon if it's not out yet.
Yeah, I looked for it because I'm curious whether or not Free Talk Live moved up a spot or down a spot or just stayed in number 24, which is where we were at last year. But I couldn't find it. I did find 2022, and Charlemagne the Great is this hip-hop guy. I don't know anything about him, but he's definitely not a conservative Republican. So he's at least there, or at least he was in 2022.
Charlemagne the God?
I don't know, man. I don't listen to that stuff. I listen to rock. He's Charlemagne something.
I'm guessing
Charlemagne the God.
The Tucker's Heavy 100 list will have to come out this week. I mean, they
usually do it before the convention, right?
Yeah, it used to come out in February, and then it was March, and then April. So they've pushed it back year after year, and normally they have to have it out before the convention because that's when they award the big free speech award, which I was awarded last year, and thank you to Talkers for doing that. One of the few people who wasn't able to come and actually accept the award, but Mark Day did give an excellent speech, and there's video of that if you go to the Free Talk Live, maybe YouTube, definitely Odyssey channel.
I'd like to thank all of the little people.
You're welcome. So anyway, that's just, I wanted to give people an update. And by the way, thanks to everybody who's written a
You know
letter.
where that comes from, Ian?
No, not offhand.
Barbara Streisand.
That sounds exactly right. I mean, that's what I would sort of expect.
Yeah, I think it was the acceptance for Yentl. And like, I think she meant it in all the right ways. And right, like compared to Barbara Streisand, all the people who worked in the movie are little people. And without their help, things wouldn't have happened the way they were supposed to happen. And what's the difference between, I'd like to thank all the people that made this possible versus all the little people. I should just shorten the sentence. But boy, oh boy, did that not resonate.
I bet it didn't. Yeah. So letters, by the way, you can still send if you want to send a letter to the judge on my behalf. We're still accepting those. You can go to letters.freetalklive.com. You might have thought about doing it before, and then you forgot. Good news is my sentencing was delayed. It was going to be in April. It's now going to be July 17th. So we still have time. If you want to send something, you can get instructions.
In theory.
You can get an address over at letters.freetalklive.com. And again, thank you to the over 100 people that
I've got
that
July
have sent letters.
16 as a Sunday.
It's the 17th, so that would be the next day.
Well, I hope it doesn't get pushed back again. I mean, mine was pushed back repeatedly.
We're still waiting on another pre-sentencing report from probation at this point.
Aria, I will take as many pushbacks as I can get in this circumstance.
I'm aware that you are, but you're not the one who's like watching the light at the end of the tunnel constantly move further away, right? Or closer as the case may be, because it's actually a freight train or whatever. But it's easy when
Let me make my argument. Thank you. You're right. Absolutely. I do not sit there in your or Ian's shoes. It's certainly not your shirt today.
It is Tapas Tuesday.
Yeah. He's not wearing a shirt, is he?
I am. I haven't.
We weren't connected with him before the show.
That's true. We were busy.
The point is that you will most assuredly, Aria, have gone to jail at that point, and the longer that Ian's is delayed, the more likely I am not stuck too hostless, which could be pretty bad for Free Talk Live. It probably requires me to do a lot of different things than I've been doing recently.
Yeah, I understand. And from that perspective, I mean, obviously, I'm hoping that Ian doesn't go to prison, right? I'm going to prison, and that's not going to change. That's why if someone wants to actually do something, if they're concerned about this, letters.freetalklive.com is the way to go, because I'm going to prison. That's not changing. That's going to happen. But Ian doesn't have to go to prison at this point. And we're hoping that he never has to go.
Speaking of which,
a possibility, because appeal is an option.
What is your day, Aria?
I'd have to check to be sure. I think it's June the 27th. It's either the 26th or the 27th. It's the Tuesday of whichever one that is. I constantly forget.
26th. Oh, wait. Yeah, 27th.
Yeah, I constantly mix them up. But that's what it is.
Did they tell you yet where?
No. And I don't expect they're going to until like the very last minute.
Okay. Probably.
Yeah.
Knowing government.
Because that's the government, right? Why? They're not in a hurry. It's not their life, right? They don't care. But it's, the whole thing has been assigned to some board. I do get asked a lot, well, are you going to a men's prison or a women's prison or where are you going?
I bet you do.
But like, guys, this is the federal government. Like, these are the same people who manage the DMV. Well, it's not really the same people, the same institution, but you know what I mean. They're not good.
Same organizational model.
Yeah, they're not good at anything.
The guy in there's a gentleman who sent a letter, and he asked us to not name him, but he's in the Midwest, we'll say that. And he is in a federal facility there, and he said, it's like living at the DMV.
Yeah, he did. Maybe that's why the idea was stuck in my head.
You're going to deal with some pettiness. You're going to deal with bureaucracy.
My concern is that I have to self-report, which means I'm going to be in one of the camps and not one of the prisons. That's why the letter, until I realized what he was saying, it kind of bothered me. I was like, oh, man, this is going to be a lot worse than I've been expecting. But then he was like, oh, but I haven't been in a camp.
He's in minimum security.
Right. And I'm going to end up in a camp, as far as we can tell, because I'm self-reporting, so I'm like the lowest of low security. Like, I'm going and turning myself in. You can't get lower security than that. And I have absolutely no criminal history. I'm college educated. There's a list online that you can tell what your classification level would be. Okay, Mark, thanks. But you can look online to see what your classification as a criminal would be. And like, I don't even get a single point at any point during the thing. So I'm 0 points other than the actual crime itself, which was a nonviolent crime. But anyway, so I don't know, but I do have to self-report on June 27th at 2 p.m. And I don't know where I'm supposed to self-report to. And how does this work? Do I get an Uber there? Do I go to the local jailhouse and get them to transport me? There's nothing that's been communicated to me about this, and nothing will be communicated to me about this until the last minute when I'm at Pork Fest.
Right.
And they're like, hey, by the way, we figured it out. You're going to Devens, Massachusetts. Have a good time. See you Tuesday.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they're going to have you drop off in Concord and then ship you down, or if you're going to have to go to the actual facility yourself and get dropped off by a friend or whatever.
I don't know.
It's crazy. How long do you expect to stay at this point, Aria?
I'm sentenced to 18 months. It is an 18-month sentence, but with the First Step Act and all of these other things, a lot of it you have to be pursuing like a degree to get some of the things knocked off. I'm likely... Some people have said 6 to 9 months. As I look more into it, it's more likely going to be 12 to 15, realistically. And it may be 12 with 3 additional months on house arrest or something along those lines. But most likely, I would say 15 months.
We have no idea.
Pursue a degree.
Huh?
Pursue a degree.
She already has a degree.
Yeah, there's nothing I could get a degree in 15 months that I would want a degree in. Like if I was going to get a degree, it would be in like theology or early Christian, history or something like that. Something that I'm really fascinated and interested in. But you're not getting an associate's degree in early Christian history.
Do you have to get the degree in order to get the time off?
I don't know. I mean, I'm going to avail myself of every opportunity to get out of there faster. You don't have to tell me to do everything I can to get out of there faster, right? I don't want to be in prison. So anything I can do, short of granting people sexual favors to get myself out faster, I'm going to be doing.
The guy that wrote the letter today, he actually says that if you take people up on sexual offers, it could get you in trouble.
Well, yeah, I would imagine so, right? They don't want that.
Yeah, probably should.
What's the story behind that?
It depends on the facility as well. You're not allowed to self-engage in these acts in a lot of prisons. It's considered self-mutilation in places. You're not allowed to be happy. You're supposed to be miserable. It's prison. They don't want people experiencing pleasure.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, Mark, if you're
somebody makes you an offer and then goes and tattles.
I don't want anyone doing me any favors about anything while I'm in prison. And anyone who wants favors done for them while they're in prison is going to have a bad time. I don't care if you want to give me a Twinkie. I don't want it. No, thank you. I'll buy my own.
Whether it's tattling or not, it could get caught, and then you get punished, and that would include loss of good time, for instance, likely in that case. Let's go to the phones here. We got Renee on the line. He's usually in Louisiana. Renee.
Yeah, what kind of subjects can I talk about?
Renee, this is a talk show where you call in and you get to talk about the things you want to talk about. We're talking about prison right now.
Yeah, prison, that's something. I want to talk about
It is.
Go ahead, Renee. What were you going to say? You want to talk about something?
Well, relate to prison. My attitude and my opinion towards judges, they're mostly wordless because they're not fair. They're biased, and they don't do a good job of rehabilitating society, which is supposed to be their job, as well as punishing people or making decisions. It's like the correction system is. I don't know if it ever was good, but it's definitely broken.
I mean, you're absolutely right. Every indication that everything that was filed in regard to my sentencing pointed to the fact that the best thing to be done to rehabilitate me or to make me a better person or whatever terminology they want to use would have been to mandate a year of therapy or something along those lines. And instead, it's 18 months in prison. Rehabilitation hasn't been the goal of the prison system in my entire life. And I'm surprised that even gets mentioned in normal conversations. It's solely an avenue for punishing people, though.
Yeah, they like to pretend like it's for corrections.
Yeah, I would say that, I mean, when you think about the judge's position here, imagine for a second that you go for your sentence to a year's worth of, talking to a therapist and all that stuff, and then you go and you commit some other crime, right? If they send you to prison and you get out and commit a crime, well, at the very least, he did all he could. He sentenced him to prison, or sentenced you to prison.
And that's sort of true, but my recidivism rate was 0.2% or something. I don't remember the exact rate that was
like
mentioned.
This is like an estimate of recidivism, the
like,
likelihood of recidivism?
Of people in my condition, my status, my whatever, my life, who are similar, they have a 0.2% chance of reoffending at some point. So there's like 1 in 500 people who would be sentenced in this charge would be likely to commit another crime. So it's meaningless.
You're not going to go right out and start selling Bitcoin again without government paperwork or whatever, even though, I don't think it's
not unless you win your appeals.
Yeah, I don't think it should be illegal, but I know these people are psychopaths, and they will come in with guns pointed at you and possibly shoot your dog if you don't get their stupid paperwork.
They did all of that except shoot my dog. I did not have a dog at the time, and thankfully they did not shoot my cats.
Yeah.
Well, my thing is that not all offenders are equal. It counts on how severe they've done their offenses. For bootlegging and selling stuff against the law. That's American tradition. That's what the colonists made a lot of money against the British Empire till finally they had a revolt and went against the British Empire. That's that extra money stuff. And it's illegal and wrong and immoral, but there are serious offenses that I would say the judicial system could be revengeful or how you say that, redress. And then there's some people that aren't really that bad off that it's a minor infraction. They should just be rehabilitated or check in, say hi, how you doing, how's your problem, and like she said, like the person said, she said, get some therapy. Not everybody should be treated equally.
The prisons are filled with victimless criminals, Renee. Thank you for the call tonight. I appreciate it. I see where you're coming from on that. The prisons are filled with victimless criminals, and it's an industry, right? Like, they want to have bodies in cells. So if it's a bureaucracy, because, they got the private prisons and then they got the government prisons. If it's a bureaucracy, they have the same incentive that every other bureaucracy has, which is to say, we need more bureaucrats. We need more prisons. We need to keep this thing going. We got a good thing going here. We got all this money coming in. And the same thing's true of these private prisons because they don't really have competition. They're just essentially like government-approved private entities that run these prisons. So the private prisons want to make sure they get more money coming in. So they want the government people to keep arresting marijuana users or other victimless criminals to fill up those cells. I mean, the incentives aren't very different between the bureaucracy and the private prisons.
Renee really hit it on the head, whether he intended to or not, in this circumstance. He said, well, some people, depending on the circumstances, they have they need to be punished severely, or whatever he said. That just comes down to a story, right? Who told me the most interesting story, the most believable story? And, in your case, the prosecution told a really great story about some people had money taken by somebody who wasn't you. And the jury only had one person they could go after.
The number here is 603-283-6160. You can bring up anything you want to discuss. Apparently, drone strikes in Moscow happened recently. And you can also bring up anything here on Free Talk Live.
This is novelist Tom Robbins. When my mother was diagnosed with glaucoma, her conservative Virginia physician told her there was only one treatment that might ease her pain and save her eyesight. That treatment was medical marijuana, which he could not prescribe. I offered to get her some and teach her how to use it effectively, but my father objected because marijuana was against the law. So my mother, who loved to read and walk in nature, was condemned to grow cruelly, unnecessarily blind. Tragedies like this happen all the time, but they don't have to keep happening. To learn more about medical marijuana, call the Marijuana Policy Project at 1-877-JOIN-MPP or visit them on the web at mpp.org.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. At least 24 Republicans say they'll vote against the U.S. debt ceiling deal agreed between President Joe Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Conservative lawmakers in the House of Representatives say they'll oppose the deal when it comes up for vote on Wednesday evening, as it fails to significantly cut government spending. The Treasury has warned the U.S. will run out of money if a deal is not passed by June the 5th. House Speaker Republican Kevin McCarthy has defended the deal that he struck with the White House.
We're pulling money back from the hardworking taxpayers that are going to China. Are they opposed to work requirements for welfare? Are we concerned about, for the first time, to be able to change the environmental review?
The trial is underway for the man accused of killing 11 worshippers at the Tree of Life Synagogue in the U.S. city of Pittsburgh. The shooting in 2018 was the deadliest anti-Semitic attack in U.S. history. Robert Bowers could face the death penalty if convicted of some of the 63 counts he faces. FSN's Sally Patterson has more.
It's been more than 4 years since a man walked into the Tree of Life Synagogue in Squirrel Hill, Pittsburgh on Shabbat, the Jewish holy day. The shooter killed 11 people and wounded 6 others, among them several Holocaust survivors. Authorities allege the suspect, Robert Bowers, made anti-Semitic comments at the scene of the attack, as well as on social media. Bowers has pleaded not guilty. His offer to plead guilty in exchange for a life sentence was denied by federal prosecutors. The suspect's lawyers argue he has schizophrenia and brain impairments. The trial is expected to last 2 months.
Disgraced tech founder Elizabeth Holmes has begun her 11-year prison sentence, she reported to authorities earlier on Tuesday. Last year, Holmes was convicted of 4 counts of defrauding investors in her blood testing company, Theranos. Former US First Lady Rosalind Carter has been diagnosed with dementia. In a statement, her family said she continues to live at home with her husband, former President Jimmy Carter, and that both are enjoying time with family in Georgia. FSN's Tony Waterman has more.
The Carter Center didn't provide details about Mrs. Carter's condition, but said by sharing the news, the family hoped to increase important conversations at kitchen tables and in doctors' offices around the country. Mrs. Carter has been a leading advocate for mental health for much of her life. An estimated 6 million Americans suffer from dementia. Her family says she is living happily at home with her husband, former President Jimmy Carter, who entered home hospice care in February.
US travel this Memorial Day weekend topped pre-pandemic levels, with 9.8 million people taking flights during the long weekend. The 4-day period, Friday through Monday, marks the unofficial start of the busy summer travel season. From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. Phones are open here if you want to join the show. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And since we're talking about prison in the Crypto 6 case, I know, Aria, you've got an El Salvador prison update. Get that ready. We'll get to it here in a little bit. We got some callers on the line. The number again, 603-283-6160. Free Talk Live, by the way, this hour brought to you by Dash. It's digital cash. Dash is a cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. That was the original vision and like almost a decade ago, and they've stuck with it, which is one of the great things about Dash. There just aren't very many cryptocurrencies that focus on actually being useful in the real world. And Dash does a great job of it. You can actually get them on a bunch of exchanges because, again, they've been around a long time. They're in multi-crypto wallets all over the place. It's easy to get and easy to use Dash. We had a great interview with Ryan Sovereign, who is one of the folks from the Dash incubator over the weekend. So if you missed that episode and you want to learn a lot about Dash, it was really an in-depth interview. Grab Saturday Night Show from archives.freetalklive.com and check that one out. But from a technical standpoint, Dash transactions are irreversible, and the network is protected from 51% attacks by their chain locks technology. We actually got into kind of the little bit more of the meat of chain locks without getting too technical. We kind of got some explanation as to how that works, how Dash is protected when pretty much every other chain is not. There's no need to wait.
Cool. I'm going to have to
yeah.
listen to that episode.
Yeah, there's no need to wait for a confirmation before considering a Dash transaction complete. So it is great for merchants, and you can go to learn more over at dash.org. Once again, that is dash.org. By the way, fees for Dash is typically less than 1 cent per transaction. Bonnie said she was checking the price between a Bitcoin transaction and a Dash transaction just the other day when she was buying lunch over at the Mighty Moose Mart here in town. And the Bitcoin transaction would have been $3.40, and the Dash transaction was way less than 1 cent. So, there's one that's useful and one that's not. So big thanks to the Dash Decentralized Organization for sending us Decentralized Autonomous Organization for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. You can visit dash.org and learn more about Dash at dash.org. Let's go to the phones here and to your calls and thoughts. Tim is in Florida. You're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead, Tim.
Yep. Well, I did call about my dog, but I did have just a couple of comments on the upcoming imprisonment or possibility of. Well,
it's definite for Aria at this point, unfortunately.
Yeah. But you can always say, do you like to read, Aria?
I love reading.
You take advantage of the time because I presume you'll have access to a library there.
I intend to spend more time writing than reading because by trade, I'm a writer. That's what I did before I ever put a microphone in front of my face. And I prefer writing. I don't have the time or the political energy to do a large amount of writing and a large amount of talk radio while also doing the, 50 hours a week at the place that I was working at. So something fell away, and that happened to be the writing. But, there's plenty of time, and it's something I enjoy doing, and that's what I'm going to end up. The first time I was ever in jail, I was kept in solitary confinement in this little holding cell.
You mean on the arrest for Crypto 6?
No, this was when I was like 17 or something.
Okay.
First time I was ever arrested. And it was a miserable experience. I was just shoved into this concrete room by myself, and I stayed there for about 2 days. And there was literally there was a toilet in the room, and that was it.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
And it was just that for 2 days while I'm 17 years old. Didn't even see another human being to interact with. So what did I do? I closed my eyes.
They must have been putting food through a slot or something,
Okay,
right?
yes, they put food through the slots. But
that's it.
That was the extent of human interaction.
She did say to interact with.
Okay, I gotcha.
And the only thing I could do there to occupy my time was tell myself stories in my head. So that was what I did.
Yeah, I think it's a good plan to plan to do some writing while you're in there. And of course, in most prisons, you are able to receive books in addition to the library. I don't know what the rules are at federal minimum security, but I think you can get books at some heavier security. I know I sent some to Chris Cantwell while he was in Max or whatever the hell he was in.
I plan to update my website, ariademezzo.com, with contact information about how people can write me and what sort of topics I'm interested in for anyone who wants to send me books or send money to my commissary or whatever. That should all be there at ariademezzo.com. It's not there yet.
I know that Chris Wade's going to update the Crypto 6 website at thecrypto6.com with all the necessary info for contacting. So that'll be done for sure. So what else, Tim?
Yeah, well, I'll go ahead and skip my ramen recipes. We can keep that for another show. But my dog this morning, I was looking around for her. I didn't see her. I saw the other dog in the living room. I look out. This is the pit bull, and she's been treeing squirrels, rabbits, birds, ducks,
toddlers.
She's been treeing them for a very, very long time, right?
She's been what to them?
To tree them would mean to run them up the tree and just keep them there?
Yeah, or just will be fascinated by like a squirrel running back and forth out of reach.
How do you tree a rabbit?
On the telephone line.
Yeah, I didn't know rabbits could climb trees.
Yeah, you're right. So that's actually not possible. But but anyway, the
chase
the
them into
point
the hole
being
though.
that so this morning I'm looking for her and I look out and she's chowing down on something like it's a full meal. And I go out there and she's got a mourning dove. She's decapitated it. She's already skinned it. She's got a mouthful of feathers. And I ended up having to take her inside, and I buried the poor thing. But I don't feel happy for the bird, but I feel happy because my dog felt happy, and she's been trying for so long.
So it was an accomplishment for the dog then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Get her a puzzle.
Well, and I
do have dog
actually, puzzles. I talked to her on walks, for the last year. I said one day Joe Biden's going to take all the food and and you're going to have to put in your weight around here.
Did you have to clean the gore off of the dog's mouth? I mean, was it pretty messy, or?
I just let her savor it. I haven't given her any toothpaste yet, but that's probably coming later tonight. But I did bury the bird, and that's how I know she's my best friend, because we buried a bird together.
That's a nice story, Tim. Thank you for the call tonight. I appreciate hearing from you. Let's go to Ricky in Pennsylvania.
I'm just kind of in shock. I don't know how to respond to any of this.
Ricky from the Commonwealth. Go ahead, Ricky.
You'll get used to it again, brother.
Go ahead, Ricky. What's on your mind tonight?
Yeah, brother. Mark, sister Ari, good evening. Now, I got something interesting because I heard you talking. I was listening tonight as always. And you were talking about the Talkers Convention. I remember you talking about that back in 2015. And you know what I find interesting? You were kind of apprehensive then. And you know what's funny about all this? And I'm thinking about this. They're saying about getting on the internet. Well, you've been on the internet. That's how I know how you and brother Mark look like. I don't know anybody else. But you had a video stream. I used to listen to it, you know? And I could watch.
Which one of us is more handsome, Ricky?
Huh?
Which one of us is more handsome?
You know what? You look different. Now, you have more of a, how should I say, more, don't take offense to this, but more of a, I don't want to use the word, I'm not the word feminine, but like a Fabio kind of thing going. Don't take offense to that. And Ian has a.
Does that mean I could end up on the front of a romance novel? Because I'm okay with that.
Probably. I think it could.
Just gotta get some long hair. We can do that with the AI.
Mark, let me keep your ego in parameters here. Ricky is legally blind.
Well, he's saying from back when he wasn't.
I know.
I'm blind now, Sister Aria.
I know.
But I could see back then.
Yeah, I know. It was just a joke, man.
All you have to do is go to my Instagram page. And you can see me with long hair because somebody put it on one of those art things.
Like Ian Freeman should have it. Suits him well.
I don't have access to Instagram, so I can't see that. What were you calling about tonight, Ricky?
Well, I was thinking about what you said about the Talkers Convention because, like I said, you're already on the internet. And they say you got to be on the internet. Now, there are people, since I came back, and I'm impressed, there are several people where it's very apparent that call in, at least more than once, that only listen to the radio. These guys don't get it. They don't get it, Brother Ian.
Who doesn't get it? The other talk show hosts?
The talkers guys, the guys at the Talker Convention, because that was going on back then.
Well, no, I mean, a lot of them do get it.
If they got it, I feel like they would probably be including podcasts to some degree in their lineups.
Oh, you're talking about the Heavy 100?
Yeah. I don't know.
I guess they don't have podcasters.
Yeah, I don't know to what extent they should because it is a talk radio convention. But if they're out there beating that drum and saying, you got to get on the internet, then start addressing the internet-only shows.
We've had the podcast version forever. I don't get what these guys are talking about. I don't understand.
Well, let me see if I can clear it up for you. So Talkers is a talk radio convention. Although I think they would say it's a talk media convention, they do want to have, podcasting types there, although they don't market to podcasters. So it's kind of like they say one thing, but then the attendees are a whole other group. But they tend to be radio talk show hosts, and there's a smattering of program directors and like network executive types that come to this. It's a schmooze fest, is what it is. It's everybody just that everybody knows everybody else, and over the years the industry is so small. People that move from one business or one company to another, they're still the same people. They just have a different title at a different company, and they come back to the same convention, and everybody trades business cards, and people, I'm sure, get new gigs. I mean, that has happened. People who are looking for work will come to this thing, and they'll find somebody who's looking to hire.
That's why I'm going.
And that kind of thing. But on occasion, we've met some program directors that we've never met in real life before, and sometimes they carry our show already, and sometimes they don't, and then they do. So, I mean, it hasn't been a total wash or anything like that, I don't think, for Free Talk Live over the year. It definitely helps raise our profile in the industry. I think it's worth attending, but I understand why someone would get burned out on it, because there's not really much. I don't think you're going to take away a lot from the content on the stage. And that's true at a lot of conventions, by the way. Like, if I'm at the Liberty Forum, which is the Free State Project convention, which I went to this year, I'm not interested in going in to watch the stage presentations. I'm here in New Hampshire. I know a lot of the stuff that's going on. I'm not going to learn new things about libertarianism, right? I'm not a newbie to libertarianism, so it's more productive to just stay outside of the stage area and actually talk to the people if you're running a booth or whatever. And in my case, that's what I was doing at Liberty Forum this year, was I was volunteering in a booth. But if it's at Talkers, then it's just hanging out in the social area where you can actually talk to people. On occasion, there will be a topic that I do want to go and see, and I'll go in and I'll sit in and watch that. But that tends to be how I am. So how I am at PorcFest. Like, I'm very rarely at the actual main stage.
It has to be a really good speech or something that I'm like uniquely interested in.
So if you it's just like any convention. It's all about networking. It's all about meeting people. If you're just going exclusively for what's happening on the stage, then it will get pretty dry, especially if you go year after year after year, because it is fairly repetitive. And the message that they have been trying to pound into these talk radio guys' heads, who are all a bunch of old dudes for the most part, is you got to get on the internet. If you're not on a podcast, you got to get a podcast. And they've been saying this for the entire 15 plus years, I think, that Mark and I have been attending this particular seminar. Probably 18 years now, because I think we started in 2005.
Which is all very similar to the Porcupine Freedom Festival. I'm fairly burned out on it as well, because it's generally the same people doing the same things year after year, and all of the speeches are about the same sort of thing. It's like you said about Liberty Forum. I don't need to go to the festival. I don't need to go to the stage to learn about how does libertarianism handle the education or whatever, because I already know that, or it's just not a topic that's interesting to me, or it's something about what is actually happening here in New Hampshire is for new people or whatever.
Right.
None of it's
what's
appealing.
interesting? That's exactly where I was going with this. And I'm glad Mark's on for this one, because this came up last night, because Ian was kind of hanging his head down. Oh, I had this idea and that idea. But you know what? Think about this. If you would have created a show that would have been like the original idea, just a libertarian think tank, they would have never made it this far. What it ended up being is far greater than one. You're on all forms of media. That being said, but second, it's far greater than that, Free Talk Live. I mean, yeah, I'm kind of like libertarian-oriented, but others aren't, and you guys all are libertarians. But what you created in the end, and I want Mark's take on this, is way greater than the original concept. That would have, I think, eventually just burned out and died.
I don't even know if I don't think you were around for the original days of this show. I mean, fundamentally, it hasn't really changed that much as far as its concept.
Your original concept you said you had never really happened. I know Darryl used to get all frustrated.
I brought my original concept I brought my original vision to the air, and it's stayed pretty firm since then. I mean, the hosts have changed, but the vision of this show
but you originally said you wanted to have it, not only the host, but also the callers be libertarian.
No, I never said that.
A way better
no,
concept.
sir, I never said that.
I said that
That's
at one
what
point.
I'm sorry. That's the impression I got last night.
No, I never said that, Ricky.
He said that he thought that libertarianism would take off.
Yeah, that's what I said last night. I said that I had hoped that libertarianism would become very popular, and that eventually Free Talk Live would actually have competition, that we would have other shows in the world of talk radio who were doing something libertarian as well, that we could be competing with, and that would raise everybody up. But no, that is what never happened. But my vision for the show was always an open phone show with libertarians behind the mics, and then anybody could call in.
If I may, Brother Ian, that's the one thing, like Darryl used to say, and he was a frustrated libertarian. He really was. The problem is libertarians is other libertarians, it tends to be.
That is true. I mean, libertarians love to have their little infightings, and we certainly heard about some of that with the Porcupine Freedom Festival last night, when a gentleman called in to complain that he apparently has been banned, which, by the way, I did hear from.
I heard that.
Yeah, I did hear from the Porcupine Freedom Festival organizer today. He's interested in calling in. He sounded like he wanted to be on the same night as me, Aria, and Bonnie. So we may have to wait until Monday to hear from him on that. But Ricky, thanks for the call. I appreciate the thoughts here tonight. The number is 603-283-6160. But yeah, Free Talk Live as its vision originally was implemented. Absolutely, there was nothing that we didn't do. We did what we intended to set out to do, which was create an open phones radio show where anyone was free to call in, and still is free to call in, about absolutely anything. So that's always been true about us.
But when we were on the rock station way back in the day, 105.9 Real Radio or whatever it was identified as early on, it was a different show. It was much more sort of character voices and people
those
fooling
were the callers.
around.
Those were the callers.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the callers, what we used to say was it's your show, right? Like the callers populated the show to some extent. And I'm not saying that your vision didn't happen, Ian. What I'm saying was the show was different.
Well, of course. I mean, it was 20 years ago, but
different callers.
And the callers were very different at that time. And that was because of the nature of the station that we were on, which was an FM talk station. And we don't really have stations like that these days.
We do have a lot of FM talk stations. We just don't have
I meant like a hot talk. Thanks for the clarification there. What in the business they would call a hot talk station, or some people might call blue talk, which is just sort of most of the shows during the day would be apolitical, meaning that they were talking about pop culture and stuff like that as far as the content was concerned.
And it was blue because it was all kind of cool and low key. That's why
I wouldn't say it was like obsessed with sex or anything like that. So I mean, blue's probably the wrong term. The term that I would use is, at least in the industry, is hot talk radio, where they're not concerned with politics or issues per se. I mean, their issues would be different, like talking about relationships or sex and things like that would have been, or pop culture would have been more of.
Oh, like the old ladies who used to do the sex radio show, right? There used to be one who did that, right?
Dr. Ruth Westheimer.
Yeah, there's been a few doctors on the air. A Loveline would be would be a good example, I think, of a kind of classic hot talk show.
Dr. Drew
Pinsky. And for a while, Adam Carolla, but then Adam Carolla retired and they've put other people on. I don't know if it's still on, but that show was around for a long time. But that's probably one of the more prominent hot talk shows. And that was the kind of station that we were on. So you got a different sort of audience. But Free Talk Live was still the same show as far as we opened the phones. Anyone could call in about anything they wanted.
Well, I don't know if Free Talk Live, has stuck true to its original vision, because you're the only one who knows that. But I'm anxious to get out of prison so I can resume seeing my therapist again, because she's really insightful, and she's made me aware of some things that I wouldn't have otherwise been aware of. Like, I mentioned something about Aria Uncensored or Call to Freedom or some other show that I was considering, but I was like, I'm going to prison, so I can't resume a show or start a new show or whatever. I don't remember exactly what the concept or the conversation was about, but she asked point blank, well, what do you consider to be a successful show, or what do you consider to be a show that's like worth your time and effort that you put into it? And I didn't have a good answer. And by contrast, she was like, well, you write these novels, you write these books, you write this music and all this other stuff, and you don't care at all if those things are, quote, successful. You don't measure your music by how popular it is, or your writing by how popular it is. So how come when it comes to these shows, you're measuring that by how popular it is? And I was like, wow, just completely taken aback, and just in that one question had to reformulate exactly what I consider to be a successful thing.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that. I mean, for me, it's like, am I satisfied as a creating person, right? Like when you're doing music, like you said, is it your vision? Is it the thing that you imagined? Is it, true to what you had originally wanted to create? Did it sound the way you wanted it to sound? Or whatever the things that you tend to judge your own performance by. Same thing's true of me. I don't really care what the statistics show. I know Mark's very concerned with statistics. It, to me, doesn't matter one iota.
Success is measurable and quantifiable.
Well,
it depends on how you define success, right?
Yeah, for me, is it
as being measurable and quantifiable?
For me, is did I show up and have a good time? Yes. Okay, that was a good show. Then if I had a good time, if I didn't have a good time, or I feel like I didn't do a great performance, if you want to call it that, then and they can't all be winners, right? You do 300 plus shows a year, you're gonna have some bombs on your hands. And same thing would be true if you did a bunch of songs and crank those things out too. So
well, every album has filler, right? I mean, that's just a fact of the situation. The music industry is sort of moving less
away from albums.
Yeah, right. Which is why I like that, because it means less filler and all singles, or not singles, whatever the word would be. But I mean, that was a line from, I think, a Primus album. They can't all be zingers. I think it was their greatest hits albums. I mean, it's absolutely true. You can't, and this was one of the reasons that like 15 years ago, my music throughput just plummeted to nothing because I was in this mindset that every new song I wrote had to be the best song I had ever written. And there was no way. Yeah, there was no way to lose the ability to write music faster than that.
Yeah. You know, some of the trolls in the chat room were complaining the other day, Free Talk Live's change is worse than it's ever been or whatever, and I pulled up the statistics at that point, because then it's, you know, then you're just playing with the trolls or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Statistics show Free Talk Live listens have been going up since Aria DiMezzo came on the show in 2017, 2019, or whatever the year was.
They were complaining about me then? Of course they were.
Yeah, they're always complaining about you, but yeah, they also complain about me for letting
Aria
you on the
doesn't
show.
wear pants. Why doesn't she wear pants?
No pants today.
I haven't worn pants since I came to New Hampshire, I don't think.
You can
I
make
think that's
Aria
the whole
wear
idea
pants.
is you don't like wearing pants.
You can make Aria wear pants. We were playing with the Adobe Photoshop Firefly last night, which is
because whatever was coming to mind for me when you were talking about me making Aria wear pants was just not really satisfying. Thanks.
So we talked last night about how Photoshop has added this AI option. Of course, everybody knows Photoshop is the go-to graphics editing suite for forever. And now they've got AI built right into Photoshop. What I learned today, though, is you got to have an internet connection. So it's not doing it on your local computer. It's sending it out to the cloud to be processed.
So it will never be pirated.
Ooh, good point. Yeah, I don't know about that. Yeah,
but I don't know. I'm going to prison before the 30 days will be up anyway. So if I'm unconvinced at this point whether or not I'm going to let the trial proceed and actually charge me, because it's $20 a month, $21 a month, or something like that.
The Adobe Photoshop trial, just to clarify. We've been talking a lot about trials here.
Yeah, sorry. The Adobe Photoshop trial is 7 days, and then it's if you buy it a month at a time, it's like $30 a month, and it's a little bit pricey. Last night, I was making the obviously stupid mistake of not selecting the target. I didn't know how to use Photoshop. It's been 10 years since I've done anything with Photoshop, so I had to relearn some of that. And then I was not overly impressed with anything that I was able to make it do, but I'm sure, like, I just wanted simple stuff like change the skirt that I'm wearing or something like that.
Well, I was able to do that with the freebie tool that they have. Anyone can go to firefly.adobe.com. This is the engine that they've put into Photoshop, and they've had it online apparently for a couple months. Anybody can sign up for an account, and you can generate images kind of like Midjourney or DALL-E 2 or Stable Diffusion. So they got their own image generator, which I haven't played much with. And then they've got the thing where you can just load up a picture, add things to it, change a background. So I put a picture of Aria in there and like gave her a mermaid fins for legs and gave her some sunglasses and changed out the background. You could do it within seconds. It's pretty amazing. We got more coming up here. It's Free Talk Live.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market. Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people like passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. At least 24 Republicans say they'll vote against the U.S. debt ceiling deal agreed between President Joe Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Conservative lawmakers in the House of Representatives say they'll oppose the deal when it comes up for vote on Wednesday evening, as it fails to significantly cut government spending. The Treasury has warned the U.S. will run out of money if a deal is not passed by June the 5th. House Speaker Republican Kevin McCarthy has defended the deal that he struck with the White House.
We're pulling money back from the hardworking taxpayers that are going to China. Are they opposed to work requirements for welfare? Are we concerned about, for the first time, to be able to change the environmental review?
The trial is underway for the man accused of killing 11 worshippers at the Tree of Life synagogue in the U.S. city of Pittsburgh. The shooting in 2018 was the deadliest anti-Semitic attack in U.S. history. Robert Bowers could face the death penalty if convicted of some of the 63 counts he faces. FSN's Sally Patterson has more.
It's been more than 4 years since a man walked into the Tree of Life synagogue in Squirrel Hill, Pittsburgh on Shabbat, the Jewish holy day. The shooter killed 11 people and wounded 6 others, among them several Holocaust survivors. Authorities allege the suspect, Robert Bowers, made anti-Semitic comments at the scene of the attack, as well as on social media. Bowers has pleaded not guilty. His offer to plead guilty in exchange for a life sentence was denied by federal prosecutors. The suspect's lawyers argue he has schizophrenia and brain impairments. The trial is expected to last 2 months.
Disgraced tech founder Elizabeth Holmes has begun her 11-year prison sentence, she reported to authorities earlier on Tuesday. Last year, Holmes was convicted of 4 counts of defrauding investors in her blood testing company, Theranos. Former US First Lady Rosalind Carter has been diagnosed with dementia. In a statement, her family said she continues to live at home with her husband, former President Jimmy Carter, and that both are enjoying time with family in Georgia. FSN's Tony Waterman has more.
The Carter Center didn't provide details about Mrs. Carter's condition, but said by sharing the news, the family hoped to increase important conversations at kitchen tables and in doctors' offices around the country. Mrs. Carter has been a leading advocate for mental health for much of her life. An estimated 6 million Americans suffer from dementia. Her family says she is living happily at home with her husband, former President Jimmy Carter, who entered home hospice care in February.
US travel this Memorial Day weekend topped pre-pandemic levels, with 9.8 million people taking flights during the long weekend. The 4-day period, Friday through Monday, marks the unofficial start of the busy summer travel season. From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is settling in for another 5 years in power after winning Sunday's runoff in the country's election. But the second round of voting revealed a Turkey deeply divided. The president beat his opponent by just 4 percentage points, an outcome that a few months ago would have been unthinkable. What's the outlook? Kim Sengupta is World Affairs editor for Britain's independent newspaper.
It means more of the same, really, except with an even more authoritarian president in his third decade in power, 25 years altogether. The fact is that despite the opposition coming to within 4% of beating him, he won. And if you listen to his message after his victory, it is very combative. It's quite aggressive towards certain sections of the community, the LGBTQ community, also the politicized Kurdish community, and basically showing absolutely no sense of compromise to the opposition. So I think you're going to see an even more emboldened President Erdogan.
And that will cause angst in a variety of global capitals. There are still, though, continuing questions about President Erdogan's health. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
And the main news again, at least 24 Republicans say they'll vote against the US debt ceiling deal agreed between President Joe Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. The trial is underway for the man accused of killing 11 worshippers at the Tree of Life synagogue in Pittsburgh. Disgraced tech founder Elizabeth Holmes has begun her 11-year prison sentence, and former US First Lady Rosalind Carter has been diagnosed with dementia. There's more from us on Twitter at Feature Story. That's Feature Story News. Nick Harper reporting.
A fully leveled up video game character marvels at how far he's come, and the milk rushing through a jug handle is having the time of its life. This is The Onion Week in Review. This week, top executives from the U.S. financial sector announced they're about ready to ruin the world again. Representatives from all major banking and investment institutions said that more than enough time has passed since they last caused a major global economic meltdown, and confirmed they're pretty much fully prepared to bring about a brand new worldwide financial crisis.
We feel like we've given people enough time to get comfortable again. Consumer spending has increased. Housing market has rebounded. So yeah, we're all set to go ahead and ruin the global economy again.
And in other news, the perfect gift for a local man is unfortunately a gift certificate to Lowe's Cinemas. Mall shoppers look on in awe as a helpless 15-year-old girl is viciously torn apart by a pack of her peers. And a drunk pilot decides to pull over onto a cloud until he sobers up. You will now hear 3 gong strikes and a recitation of the great chant before being ushered to the hallowed garden. For more, keep checking theonion.com.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, and the phones are open here if you want to join us. Number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Joining you tonight, it's Ian,
Aria,
and Mark. We got Mark out there somewhere in the world, remotely.
I'm in Florida.
In Florida. All right. Good to have you here. Let's see. There was some big news yesterday that I completely neglected to share on the international scene. And then coming up, since we're talking to international news a little bit, I know, Aria, you've got an update on the El Salvador prison roundups, where they've rounded up tens of thousands of individuals on absolutely no charges whatsoever, just simply on suspect.
And have tortured some of them. And 153 people have died
of
being tortured.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that coming up here. But in other related international news, according to the-sun.com, you remember a few weeks ago there was news that there was like a drone that had flown into Moscow and had struck, like it had exploded right over the Kremlin. Do you remember hearing that story a little while back?
Yeah.
Well, apparently the drones came back in much larger numbers recently. This is in recent days, according to The Sun, blitzed by a swarm of drones in a rare attack on the Russian capital after Ukraine vowed to respond to a barrage of unprecedented missile attacks recently. So I guess, was this last night? Anyway, looks like a couple people were injured. There were at least several, maybe looks like they've got a little map here, maybe as many as 7 or 8 explosions. They shot down a number of drones as well, so it could have been like a dozen plus drones that were flown into Moscow. So I mean, this is definitely, some escalation going on over there. This war it's pretty ugly.
Well, that's what they wanted.
Yeah.
Zelensky and Putin, instead of just getting into a ring and like beating the crap out of each other, they want to sacrifice the entire world.
Of course, yeah. The government top goons are never going to do the actual fighting,
which would be a less violent way for this to be resolved. They have an issue, let them get together and fight it out, right? There's no need to kill a bunch of innocent bystanders.
Yep. In this case, thankfully, apparently no one did die, but it obviously is going to keep this conflict going on. In other international news, and this is the big one I neglected to share yesterday, The Telegraph is reporting over in the UK that the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, this is the banker guy or whatever that's like in a top position over there. Yeah, Prime Minister in the UK. He is asking for price caps on food.
Well, that won't work.
Never does.
This is why people are going to starve.
But the difference between this and your typical price caps is he is apparently just, quote unquote, asking. Because normally when you see the mainstream media reporting that government asked so-and-so to do a thing, or a government asked this business to, jump through all these hoops. They never ask you. Usually when the government does a thing, the government gang is threatening you, and if you don't do the thing that they are quote-unquote asking, they will then put a gun to your head and force you to do the thing, or close your business, or put you in a prison cell, right?
And economic law on this particular scenario is so clear. If you implement price caps, you will have definitively 100% for certain shortages of whatever you put that cap on.
This is basic economics.
Yeah, if you put this price cap on food, people will starve.
Right. So England may control all of English food, but probably England doesn't produce enough food to feed England. So if you put, which means that food comes in from the outside, and if somebody puts price caps on food, then if you are a farmer who sells watermelons and you can sell them at a place where they are $3 a piece, or you can sell them at a place where they're price capped at $2 a piece. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask you, before you answer, is it evil to sell a watermelon at $3? What would you do? And that's the end of the whole thing. They're going to go to the Netherlands where they'll pay $3.
Yeah, and then they'll get smuggled into the UK from the Netherlands,
and they'll pay $5,
4 or 5. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Hopefully,
or 6.
Hopefully, they'll be smuggled in, and people can buy them on the black market.
Yeah.
The alternative is, again, starvation.
So this is probably best described as a soft price cap, at least the way it's being explained here. So let me get into it here from the Telegraph. They say that they're drawing up plans for retailers to introduce price caps on basic food items such as bread and milk to help tackle the rising cost of living. Rishi Sunak's aides have started to work on a deal with supermarkets akin to an agreement in France in which the country's major retailers charge the, quote, lowest possible amount, unquote, for some essential food products. The move would amount to the biggest attempt to manage supermarket prices since controls established by Edward Heath in 1973. However, they insist that any action by retailers would be voluntary at this point.
Yeah, I mean, everything the government does starts out voluntary.
Like E-Verify?
Yeah, and like the seatbelt laws, initially it was just a secondary offense. You couldn't get pulled over for it.
That's true.
That went away quickly.
Well, not everything is voluntary, but yeah.
If now the retailers are in a catch-22, because if they keep prices low in order to be kind to people during the economic difficulties, in hopes that their customers will remain loyal when things get better, then they have acquiesced to the government, and the government then takes credit. Look at us! We asked the retailers, and they trembled before our power. We control the big corporations and blah, blah, blah. However, if they don't, if they just go ahead and say, look, we've got to charge what we've got to charge here, then the government goes in and says, these evil corporations are doing evil corporation things. If you just grant us more power, we promise not to invade some hapless country like we did before. This time we'll go after the corporations.
Well, and of course, they've been using corporations as the scapegoat for quote-unquote inflation, on blaming the greedy corporations. How dare they just raise their prices, and they're colluding to raise their prices on top of that.
We told them 3 years ago at the outset of COVID-19, when they printed the very first stimulus checks, that they were going to have to increase prices as a direct result of this.
Yep, and food's been taking it on the chin,
You mean we, right? Free Talk Live, told them?
Yes.
We did, yes.
Yeah. We did, but Free Talk Live has been around for 20 years, and nobody's ever listened to us about anything.
No one in politics, but there are the people that are listening. I'm sure some people did the right thing.
Well, hopefully they listened they should be listening, because at that same time we pointed out, hey, look, instead of taking this $1,200 stimulus check and buying a television or something, use it to buy Bitcoin. And there's a Twitter handle now called Bitcoin Stimulus or something like that tracks it. And the last we checked, you would have turned that $1,200 into $4,000 or something like that. A huge return on your investment.
Now, of course, you have to wonder, what is the deal that they are cutting with these retailers, right? I mean, there's there's got to be something offered in return. So I'm guessing that it's like, okay, well, we'll subsidize your energy bill, or we're going to give you a subsidy over here, or cut your tax bill over here, something like that. They've got to give some sort of option if they want people to take this voluntarily. You would think, beyond just,
because otherwise they're
going
to have to fire staff or something, because they're not making huge profits here. They're not
That's
making
true.
50% profits or anything like that.
No, retail is known, or not retail, but grocery, for instance, is known for making very low profits overall. It's like something like 2 to 3% is what they make. Now, I mean, certain items, you go in and you get a fancy mustard or something like that, they're going to make more than 2 to 3%, but it all averages out.
It's not that easy. It's not just the fancy mustard. Like that way you can just tell whether you're getting something fancy and paying a lot or not. I mean, often it's that way, but honestly, there can be disparities between grocery stores on some very basic stuff. Sometimes they have loss leaders on all kinds of different things. So, I'm not going to tell anybody to go shopping at 4 different grocery stores, because I don't do it either. But at the same time, that's just sort of the reality of it is that, some of them are lower on the fancy mustard. Some of them are lower on ribeye steaks.
Yeah, but overall in the industry, it averages out to something like 2 to 3% is what they make.
No lie.
Overall. And I suspect that means, now I've never worked in the grocery business, so I can't speak from experience on this. So if you are out there and you do actually work in management or something like that, I'm guessing that these basic items that they're talking about here are probably not the big profit makers to begin with, right? Like, how much are they marking up a 12-pack of eggs? How much are they marking up a loaf of bread to begin with? These are the basic items. These are the items they have to compete on the hardest. These are the ones that people are going to buy more often than anything else when they come into the store, right? Like, you only need your fancy hot sauce or mustard every once in a while, but you got to get the eggs pretty often by comparison, or the produce. So that would be something I'd be interested in seeing is, what are the areas where these stores tend to not mark things up very much, because that's what they're putting in the circulars, right? Like, you got to come get your loaf of bread for $7 or whatever the hell they are now. They're really expensive for this stuff now. Yeah, I haven't.
It depends on the bread you eat, but at the same time, whenever I see ribeye steaks on sale, right? Like, I just don't like a New York strip, but whenever I see a ribeye steak on sale, I'll just buy as many as I can happen to have cash in my pocket for, and put them in the freezer, because I know I'm going to eat this, and it doesn't matter to me whether it's been frozen for 3 weeks or whatever.
Jay in our chat room, he says grocery stores make such low profit margins because they have an enormous amount of waste product. He says, I've seen the amount of food Publix throws away in a day. Perfectly fine food. Their standard is just so high, about $2,000 worth retail. And
that makes sense as well. I mean, food expires, and if it expires, you can't sell it.
Well,
even if
I know that the bread people take their expired bread with them, so Publix isn't throwing that away.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what's happening to the vegetables or something like that, but I did used to be on the receiving end of a guy who did a grocery route. He delivered all kinds of things for UNFI, and they pick up old vegetables. So, I don't entirely know how all this works. I also, received food from a food bank. So basically the things that poor people didn't want that were given for free, I would take that and feed it to pigs. And it was always the artesian breads and the vegetables, never the candy bars.
So if you want to comment, join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. We'll tell you more about this, what again I would call a soft price cap in the UK. But first, Chuck is on the line in Washington State. Go ahead, Chuck.
Yeah, you were talking about the further situation degrading in Eastern Europe. Have you guys been following what's going on in Kosovo as of the late?
No, what's going on there?
No.
So it looks like that there's a movement right now in the northern part of the country. It's divided, as you know. It's and up in the northern part, there's been 2 lawmakers that were elected that are Albanian Muslims, and there's a strong reaction in the form of protest happening. There's been clashes with Serbian citizens and NATO troops representing several different NATO countries to include the United States. There's video footage of the clashes happening, and basically you see what presumably U.S. Army military police getting drug off the front line, replaced by fresh meat there. It looks like something you'd see in like Minneapolis, Seattle, Portland, or wherever, except you guys are using bricks and iron rods, and why I'm calling is it looks like it's contributing to the overall downward slope. It looks like what's happening in Eastern Europe. So.
Yeah, according to the headlines here, Newser.com says NATO will send 700 more troops to northern Kosovo to help quell violent protests after clashes with ethnic Serbs left 30 international soldiers wounded. The latest violence has stirred fear for a renewal of the 1998-99 conflict in Kosovo that claimed more than 10,000 lives. So, yeah, this possibly could.
Yeah, so back in 2008, as you remember, in 2008, Kosovo established its independence, and there's been periods of tensions that have arose, from now until then, or from then until now. But this is a different thing because of the Russian Federation's obvious influence and desire to destabilize anything that has to do with NATO in that region of the world. So, thank you very much for letting me.
That seems like a slanted take.
It really is, because I was there and I know what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you for the call tonight, Chuck. Appreciate the heads up on that.
I mean, yeah, but there are plenty of people in Ukraine who insist, the Russians are, going around raping and killing infants and stuff as well. I mean, just...
Who knows what the truth is?
Right. I mean, that's one side of a story, and I don't think it's going to be fair to blame Russia and their attempt to destabilize everything related to NATO for what's happening in Kosovo. I don't know what's happening in Kosovo, but I will say that as someone who, spews propaganda regularly, like here on the air, it sounds to me like propaganda.
Well, there's always propaganda when it comes to war, right? I mean, this is one of the things that we made really clear when Russia first invaded the Ukraine, was that there's at least two sides, if not more, to every conflict, but yet the Western media will only let you hear one side. Now, I'm not saying that the Russian side is always telling the truth either, but
but I want to be able to hear their side.
Yeah, the first the first casualty in war is the truth, right? Like
that was Hemingway.
I don't know who said that, but here's a little bit more information about this particular story.
Well, I'd like to pop in real quick and say that the Serbs have always, they're friendly with the Russians, and in this case, we're talking about ethnic Serbs in Kosovo as opposed to nationalists. Nationally, their nationality, Serbian nationality. So it's a very believable take, if not a slanted one.
So here's an update on what they say, at least according to the Newser.com, is going on there. They refer to the old conflict in the 90s, which left more than 1 million people homeless and resulted in a NATO so-called peacekeeping mission that has lasted nearly a quarter of a century, according to the AP.
Look, you don't need to keep peace. You don't need any sort of military force. You don't need any effort.
Well, they do if they want to keep flowing money into the military-industrial complex.
Yes, you do need military for that. But to keep peace, all you have to do is let people live. Like, that's it.
The clashes grew out of a confrontation, they say, that unfolded last week after ethnic Albanian officials elected in votes overwhelmingly boycotted by Serbs entered municipal buildings to take office. When the Serbs tried to block them, Kosovo police fired tear gas to disperse the crowd. More violence followed Monday when Serbs attempted to enter the municipal offices in Zvakan, which is 28 miles north of the capital, and clashed with police and NATO peacekeepers. The NATO Secretary General said additional reserve battalion will be put on high readiness in case additional troops are needed. And
it sounds like a mess where NATO involvement or U.S. involvement could not possibly make the situation better.
Yeah.
It's like the Serbs and the Albanians here, they're going to fight each other, and they're not agreeing, and they're trying to run a country together. Maybe they should divorce.
The NATO-led peacekeeping mission, so-called, in the region is known as KFOR and currently consists of almost 3,800 troops. A statement issued on Tuesday said that 30 soldiers, including Italians and Hungarians, were the ones hurt in the fighting on Monday. Fractures, burns from improvised explosive incendiary devices, and so on. So this is a developing story. And, of course, if you want to keep us up to date, feel free to continue to do that.
It sounds like it's just a remnant of the Cold War, or a continuation of the Cold War. You've got the Russian Serbs and the NATO Albanians, and they're fighting, and they're sending soldiers there, and they're just fighting out the Cold War still.
Yeah, I got to say, I'm not particularly familiar with the geography of this particular country. The most we've talked about.
I'd say this was a extension of the Ottoman takeover of Europe. Mm-hmm. The Ottoman Empire, decided to make people Muslim there in Europe, and what is now called Europe. I don't think at the time they spent much time thinking about what is Europe, especially not the Turks. And that's having backlash now. It's long-standing disputes. Now, it couldn't get much smaller. Kosovo is a cutout of Serbia already, and I don't know how you cut these things down to, little county size things and just let them rule themselves. But it's going to affect their EU status and a variety of things.
So Kosovo is separate from Serbia, or is it still?
Yes.
Okay.
It's got a dotted line on Google, which is not it's not a good sign.
That's
sovereignty.
Does that mean it's disputed or something? What does that mean?
I'm sure that there are Serbs that dispute it. Yes, That's what it looks like.
Is that something that happened in the 90s? Was they kind of carved that out as its own separate thing?
It seems like they just keep on getting carved out. Serbia wasn't a country in the 90s, as I recall. This is all Yugoslavia and the breakup there.
Ah, okay. Yeah, so I'm looking here at the map. Looks like this is southwest of Ukraine is where this is taking place. Serbia next door to this Albania. So it's Albania that borders Kosovo on the southwestern side and Serbia that borders it on the northern side. And so apparently Albanians are getting into office in Kosovo, and that is what has... Was it Kosovo? Yeah, that's what it has.
It sounds like a mess, and it sounds to me like just Cold War fighting. And I don't know how else to feel about it. It's Russia against NATO again. Or still.
Well, I don't know what anybody's going to feel about it when, politics is the desire to shove your opinion down your neighbor's throat, right? So just because the Albanians are Muslim or Christian or whatever they might be, doesn't make me like them more or less. Were they elected fairly? Well, when you decide to protest a vote by not voting, expect the result, right? You choose not to vote, then, hey. Now, personally, I don't vote because when I vote and when I don't vote, I get the same result. But in this circumstance, I just frankly don't care that much. If they want to tear their government apart, which is precisely what they're going to do by trying to prevent people who are, duly elected, well, then have at it.
We have no idea how how scammy or whatever these elections were, but either way,
and even if it was
I'm certainly not here to say that the election in the United States, Kosovo, was completely fair.
Well, even if it was, fair, the idea of the election itself is still fraudulent. Like plenty of the people would have not voted for anyone because they would have voted.
That is an idea so fringe that these people will not stop and listen while they're busy killing each other.
I often forget how fringe I am, Mark.
And the NATO is apparently involved. However, I did just check. Neither of these are European Union countries. So even though there's a lot of EU in this part of the world, these particular areas are not.
Really?
According to the list I just
looked
NATO?
They're NATO.
Yeah, more coming up here. Free Talk Live.
If you're looking for work, the person you are applying to may be even more nervous than you are. And the way things are now, your references have never been more important. Here are 3 tips. First, know that employers are checking. Every hire is under the microscope these days. Second, they won't just be checking references you provide. Figure that all of your ex-employers will get a call and be asked, would you hire him or her again? Third, assume you will be Googled. So before you apply, remove all those party animal photos from your Facebook page. Even if you're not in the job market, effective communication skills have never been more important, with money and attention so scarce now. For more tips for job seekers and getting better results in all your day-to-day communication, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. At least 24 Republicans say they'll vote against the U.S. debt ceiling deal agreed between President Joe Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Conservative lawmakers in the House of Representatives say they'll oppose the deal when it comes up for vote on Wednesday evening, as it fails to significantly cut government spending. The Treasury has warned the U.S. will run out of money if a deal is not passed by June the 5th. House Speaker Republican Kevin McCarthy has defended the deal that he struck with the White House.
We're pulling money back from the hardworking taxpayers that are going to China. Are they opposed to work requirements for welfare? Are we concerned about, for the first time, to be able to change the environmental review?
The trial is underway for the man accused of killing 11 worshippers at the Tree of Life synagogue in the U.S. city of Pittsburgh. The shooting in 2018 was the deadliest anti-Semitic attack in U.S. history. Robert Bowers could face the death penalty if convicted of some of the 63 counts he faces. FSN Sally Patterson has more.
It's been more than 4 years since a man walked into the Tree of Life synagogue in Squirrel Hill, Pittsburgh on Shabbat, the Jewish holy day. The shooter killed 11 people and wounded 6 others, among them several Holocaust survivors. Authorities allege the suspect, Robert Bowers, made anti-Semitic comments at the scene of the attack, as well as on social media. Bowers has pleaded not guilty. His offer to plead guilty in exchange for a life sentence was denied by federal prosecutors. The suspect's lawyers argue he has schizophrenia and brain impairments. The trial is expected to last 2 months.
Disgraced tech founder Elizabeth Holmes has begun her 11-year prison sentence, she reported to authorities earlier on Tuesday. Last year, Holmes was convicted of 4 counts of defrauding investors in her blood testing company, Theranos. Former US First Lady Rosalind Carter has been diagnosed with dementia. In a statement, her family said she continues to live at home with her husband, former President Jimmy Carter, and that both are enjoying time with family in Georgia. FSN's Tony Waterman has more.
The Carter Center didn't provide details about Mrs. Carter's condition, but said by sharing the news, the family hoped to increase important conversations at kitchen tables and in doctors' offices around the country. Mrs. Carter has been a leading advocate for mental health for much of her life. An estimated 6 million Americans suffer from dementia. Her family says she is living happily at home with her husband, former President Jimmy Carter, who entered home hospice care in February.
U.S. travel this Memorial Day weekend topped pre-pandemic levels, with 9.8 million people taking flights during the long weekend. The 4-day period, Friday through Monday, marks the unofficial start of the busy summer travel season. From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. Phones are open, and you can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. It's Ian, Aria, and Mark joining you here tonight. That's 603-283-6160. You can join us online anytime you want. Head over to freetalklive.com and enjoy the features that we have waiting for you there. We're going to go back to your phone calls and thoughts. We did just have a gentleman call in to give us a heads up that there's apparently conflict erupting in Kosovo, which hasn't at least caught any of our attention in recent years. But it's sparking off some violent conflict again. Now NATO is apparently involved with their so-called peacekeeping troops over there.
Well, NATO's been there since the Clinton campaign in
Apparently so.
98,
Yeah.
apparently, because they said 25
For a
years,
quarter of
and
a
yeah,
century.
that would have been 98. So.
Yeah.
So clearly, the peacekeeping efforts there have
Didn't
not
work.
worked.
Yeah,
and
right.
this is one of those things you just got to rip that Band-Aid off, man. And I hate to say it, right? But you just got to let the Palestinians and Israel fight this out. You just got to let the Kosovo and the Serbians and what were the other ones?
The Albanians.
The Albanians fight it out, and hopefully they'll come to a peaceful resolution. But intervening in that and be like, no, guys, you have to get along, is clearly not working. Be reasonable and try to, get them to see reason. But if these two people don't get along, stop trying to mix them together. Stop trying to make them get along. It doesn't work. And nowhere in human history can we point to these examples of Israel in the Middle East or the Palestinians, or here we have Serbia and Albania. And never have we been able to point to any example of these people being forced together, saying, look, they ultimately got along just fine. It doesn't work.
Do you remember that tennis guy, Djokovic, who made headlines during...
The one who didn't want to get vaccinated?
Right, yeah. He's back in the news for speaking out in regards to what's happening, because apparently Serbia is where he's from.
Okay.
So he's back in the news, and let me just comment here. He's got a story here over at, it looks like AOL. Who knew they still existed?
Yeah.
It's from The Hill. They're just, syndicating the story. Anyway, apparently he's spoken out during the French Open after the violent clashes in Kosovo.
Oh, France is going to hate that.
Though he called for an end to the violence in a message on camera, wrote a message on a camera lens. Apparently, his claims that, quote, Kosovo is the heart of Serbia was seen by some as stoking the historic tensions. Kosovo declared its independence from Serbia in 2008 and has been recognized as a separate state by the United States and much of the West. However, Serbia has refused to recognize Kosovo's statehood. So yet another example here of a recent declaration of independence that the United States has said, looks good.
Yep. I mean, I don't know to what extent the Declaration of Independence was or wasn't legitimate. I don't know what constitutes a legitimate Declaration of Independence versus what doesn't, but...
If you say so, it's legitimate.
Yeah, that's where I stand.
I've heard
on
lots of American lawyers say that it's completely legitimate.
Well, I think if any Declaration of Independence is by definition legitimate, but I realize that's a fringe take. I think fringe was the word Mark used for me, and I recognize that, but... It's still, there's a long history here of things going on in Serbia and Kosovo and Albania and Yugoslavia and that region in general. There's such a long history of interference, intervening, bloodshed, and carnage that you're not going to fix the problem. You just got to let it play out.
So Serbia has refused to recognize Kosovo's statehood, creating simmering instability decades after the bloody conflict of the 1990s.
Now, is Kosovo are they at the edge of Serbia?
Yes.
Or, okay, so they're not
southwestern
completely
portion.
surrounded by Serbia?
Correct.
Okay, well, there's that at least.
It's not an exclave or an enclave, whatever you want to talk about there.
Correct.
Right, so it's not like Colorado declaring independence from the United States.
Nope.
Which is at least a little bit more unwieldy than New Hampshire.
So at his first round victory in the French Open, Djokovic wrote a message in Serbian on the camera lens, which read, quote, Kosovo is the heart of Serbia, stop the violence, and he used a heart symbol for the word heart.
Oh, no, see, you just made all of the Europeans mad. You can't refer to Kosovo as part of Serbia, clearly.
Yeah. So,
I mean, I don't agree with you or disagree with you because it's not my call, but I know what the Europeans are thinking right here, and they're like, Serbia, that's Russia. We hate them. So there's no chance that message fell on warm ears.
Djokovic's message was shown on the big screen at some place in wherever there it was. Speaking to the media following his match, Djokovic, whose father was born in Kosovo, said he felt it was his responsibility as a public figure to cast his support for the people of Kosovo at this time.
Wait, that's the opposite of what I got from his message.
He says, especially as a son of a man born in Kosovo, I feel I need to give my support to our people and the entirety of Serbia. So he may believe that Kosovo still should be part of Serbia. He says, I don't know, and I think many others don't know what the future brings for Kosovo and for the Serbian people, but it's necessary to show support and demonstrate unity in these kinds of situations. I don't know what will happen, he said. And he did call for an end to the violence. So, I mean, at the very least, he's right about that. Whether or not he believes in the independence of Kosovo is not clear.
That's fair, and I guess he doesn't have to take a side.
One could interpret his statement as being against the independence of it. The Tennis Federation of Kosovo accused him of aggravating the ongoing situation, with the federation president saying,
"Your opinion isn't exactly what my opinion is. You're evil."
They said that he was, quote, already the author of similar actions in the past. And
how dare he call for peace
the same
and
man
unity.
Said, despite a general message against violence, the statement, quote, Kosovo is the heart of Serbia, unquote, and further statements after the match made by such a public figure on the occasion of a worldwide event like the French Open, directly resulting in raising the level of tension between the two states, Serbia and Kosovo, he said in his statement.
I don't believe that the people in Kosovo and Serbia were like driven to an angry rage over what this guy said.
By this guy saying, stop the violence.
And I would like to correct something I just said, how dare he call for unity or whatever. When we're talking about an issue of independence and not being united, someone calling for unity is taking the opposite side. So I can't just how dare he call for unity because he's calling for a refusal to recognize independence in that particular case. If that's how he meant it, there may be all sorts of language barriers here.
Well, and also if... Again, we're still just taking what we've heard as what's really happening. We don't know. But if it's true that there was an election in Kosovo or in one of the towns or whatever, and Albanians allegedly won the election and the Serbians are now starting a fight over that, then by him calling for an end to violence, he is calling for his own countrymen essentially to stand down in that particular case. If it is indeed the Serbs who started the fight. Yeah.
It reminds me of Catalonia and I think Spain, though, where Catalonia had an election to see if they would declare independence.
They tried to.
And the official people in Spain were like, no, we're boycotting this election. So obviously the results were widespread pro-independence. And we had the exact. And in that case, we saw people, oh, no, we refuse to recognize Catalonian independence or whatever. And it was horrific. And the United States said the same thing, even though it's the exact same situation, but from the opposite side.
Same thing in Ukraine.
Yep.
Where Russia, they had some elections in the Donbass region, and the elections went heavily pro-Russia as far as we want to secede and join Russia, is what they essentially said. And the Western world said, oh, no. Those aren't legitimate elections.
Right. Those aren't legitimate results because I disagree with them.
Right.
You protested those.
What's that?
They're wagging their fingers saying, no, you protested those elections, and therefore they're not legitimate.
Right. And it just comes down to people, people are saying, well, Russia's bad, so anything that goes Russia's way, we call bad. And it's the same old simpleton way of looking at the world. Look, there are people in this world, I don't know, maybe we can call them Russians, who, if they live in an area, concentrated enough in an area, they're going to want to, be separate from whatever their other government is. And so what?
We got Major Payne on the line here. He's in Michigan. You're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead, Major.
Yeah, there's a couple things you guys ain't taking into perspective here with this whole thing.
Okay.
Remember, just after World War II, the victors all divvied up the spoils and they drew new fictitious lines everywhere and made countries where there wasn't none. Well, there might have been 2, 3, 5, 7 ancient clans, tribes, whatever you want to call them, living in that geographical trap. And they've been battling for, their ancient grievances for thousands and thousands of years.
Right.
And you think drawing a line in the sand that just blows away is going to change something?
Of course not.
No, we pointed out that, there's a long history of bloodshed and violence here and people not agreeing with one another, and that the attempts to intervene in the situation are not doing anything to make anything better.
Well, the difficulty here that's in place is that NATO allowed Serbia and allowed Albania to enter because it wants it wants to stick it in Russia's eye so bad that now when NATO states are fighting NATO states, they don't have a system for dealing with this.
Well, NATO states aren't supposed to fight one another, right?
Well, go make them stop.
I have no interest in making them do anything.
Yeah, I think NATO should be abolished.
I think the problem there is NATO.
Probably never should have been instituted. But that's a whole other conversation for a whole other day.
All right, what else,
Mark
Major?
brought up free-range pigs or free-ranging pigs.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, this must have been almost 50 years ago. I was still a teenager. I think probably 76, 78, somewhere in there. A bunch of my buddies, and there was 4 or 5 of them, they'd all gotten good factory rat jobs at GM and, Ford and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So they rented this big old farmhouse just on the outskirts of town. Well, it turns out that both the roads cornering it were the township line. So we were pretty much exempt from the noise ordinances and whatnot and could raise as much hell as we want to.
Okay.
Well, we threw a bunch of parties. And we got the place in the fall. And then come next spring, I don't remember who come up with the idea. I think it was Mike Conklin. He says, let's go get some feeder pigs. Because we had a great big 3 or 4 stall, great big long garage, right? And so we turned one of the bays into a pig pen and went around and got all the produce that the grocery stores would throw away.
Mm-hmm.
We'd do this once or twice a week.
Right.
And just load the pickup truck. And, after a minute, got a little smarter and went in and talked to the produce manager and says, well, what day do you throw all this stuff away?
Mm-hmm.
And what time? Well, we just pull up there with the pickup truck, and instead of throwing it in the dumpster, we'd
Load it
throw
up.
it right in the pickup
Nice.
truck.
Yeah.
So, so that was cool. And, we had some hell of a pig roast that fall.
I bet.
These days, somebody's
later,
figured that out. These days, pretty much you're going to be fighting at each grocery store.
Fighting with other people that want to get the food, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, basically, a grocery store is the first place that people are going to think of to go to get produce and these sorts of things to feed pigs, and you kind of have to get yourself an in.
So there's already probably people that have agreements with a lot of the stores to just come and collect, essentially.
Yes, in all likelihood. Now, I'm not, your mileage may vary.
Yeah, you can try it and see how it goes.
I encourage everyone to do just such a thing, but yeah.
No, I know guys that got deals with restaurants and whatnot to take their fat out of their dumpsters, and they'll use it for bear bait or whatever. But there's all kinds of one man's trash is another man's bacon, so to speak.
This is true. Thank you, Major, for the call tonight. I appreciate it.
One more thought on pigs. If you don't already own a pickup truck and then buying a pickup truck in order to transport the food that you're going to feed your pigs dramatically increases the price per pound of your pigs for a long time. Basically that pickup truck is a lot of money.
Sure.
And, unless you just happen to have a pickup truck or do pickup truck things, first off, if you've got a pickup truck, look at your life. Do you really need it?
Good. Thank God you said that, Mark, because as soon as you mentioned the pickup truck, that is exactly what I thought, because they are so common. And like here in New York, I've seen maybe 1% of them seem like they're justified. I have a friend who drives this great, big, enormous truck, never hauls anything. Like he could get fined with a motorcycle, and instead he's driving around this big, giant truck, and he's not uncommon. And it's like, why are you people? Why are you happy with your 3 miles per gallon?
Some
or
people
whatever
just want to be that guy that everybody comes to ask them if they can help them move. Because that always happens.
That is 100% this guy too.
Whenever you have a pickup truck, somebody's going to ask you eventually to help them move.
And he wants to be that guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe he does. I don't know.
No, I know he does in particular. The person I'm thinking of does.
Let's go to Frank in Michigan. You're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead, Frank.
Hey, I want to switch it up a little bit, if that's okay.
Please.
I want to talk about my journey to being more libertarian-minded than I used to be. I used to be basic Republican, conservative type of person. But in my opinion, what happened to me was a Supreme Court decision that came through, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with, Kelo versus New London.
Oh yeah, that was the
a long time. Yeah,
2006, I think, somewhere around that time frame when the Kelo case was in New London, Connecticut. It was a big project that the city and their buddies took on to destroy a neighborhood that had been in existence for generations. Homes had been owned by the people in this neighborhood for generations, passed down from grandmothers and great-grandmothers and things like that. And
it wasn't a nice neighborhood, but it was a neighborhood.
Yeah, and people had lived there for a very long time, and the city government decided, you know what, we could make more money in tax revenue if this were a big corporate complex. And so they teamed up with their city-funded or city-organized development corporation. These are just the city under a different name, essentially. And this development corporation contacted corporations like Pfizer and got them to say, yeah, if you build this corporate complex, we'll rent it. And so they got their, they got the companies on board, on deck to jump into this. And they just started going around and making people offers on their homes, the offer you can't refuse.
Offers they couldn't refuse.
Yeah, exactly. And
what does this mean exactly?
The offer you can't refuse?
Yeah.
It's a reference to like mafia, where they come in.
It was eminent domain. They said, this is what we're paying for your property.
I gotcha.
Get out. You have 60 days. Get out.
And there were a couple of holdouts. One woman was named Suzette Kelo, and she said, no, I don't want to leave. This is my grandma's home or whatever, and we've been here a long time, and we really like this place, and no, we don't want to take your money. And you probably know Lauren Canario.
Yep.
She made headlines because before she moved to New Hampshire, she went to New London, Connecticut, and she sat on the porch of Suzette Kelo's home when the bulldozers were coming in to take the place down, and was arrested for that. Subsequently was arrested again in a stairwell at a city council meeting for doing civil disobedience in that particular instance, if I recall correctly. She was civilly disobedient to the point where she did not actually cooperate with her arrest. So she
remember that she dropped dead
went
weight.
limp. Yeah, she made them lift her up, and like even to the point where when they would come to get her to go to court, she would not leave the jail cell voluntarily either. They had to go in, bring a wheelchair to the jail cell, lift her into the wheelchair, lift her into the van, lift her out of the van into another wheelchair, and get her into the courtroom. It was really something else.
Man, that's hardcore.
Epic level, hardcore civil disobedience. And of course, as you might imagine, they did take Suzette Kelo's house by force. Ultimately, they, I don't know if they ended up forcing the money on her or whatever happened in that case, but it went to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the town, and the justification was that, oh, well, this wasn't for a private benefit, because you're not supposed to be able to do eminent domain. There's a restriction on eminent domain saying it has to be for the public benefit, not the
public
private
use.
Public use
versus it was public. Like the argument is that the founders who wrote public use meant public good.
And they said that the public
good. The Supreme Court of the United States said, yeah, that sounds right.
And, well, the argument was, well, it's the public good if the government is getting more tax dollars. So, therefore, it's okay.
But it wasn't about the public good. It was about the public, like it's supposed to be about public use.
Well, whatever.
I know.
That's what they interpreted
whatever,
it to
these
mean.
People have to leave.
And you always have to remember, this was one of the first things that clued me into the word public was actually a euphemism for government. Because a lot of people believe that public means, oh, it's all of us. No.
Well, this is one of the things that broke me. Yeah. I was basically a small government Republican up until that point. And then I watched as the Supreme Court justices, I'm sure the founders meant public good, not public use, and just sort of rewrote the Constitution. And I couldn't believe it. And that was it.
So, Frank, that was our recap there for listeners that weren't familiar with the case.
I appreciate it, because I was not at all familiar with it.
Go on with your story.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, and I'm right there with Mark. That was the tipping point for me as well. I mean, basically, I learned the hard way. Well, not personally, but through Kelo, I learned that there really is no such thing as private property. The government owns all property, and they can take it for any reason at any time. And it was a disgusting decision. I mean, I can wrap my head around eminent domain. I mean, you need to build this road or something. Okay, well, maybe you can justify that. But to take property for somebody with force for a private, basically it was private businesses that they said, well, these private businesses are going to do a better job with this property than these homeowners. So sorry, we're kicking you out. And
Colin, what did you say your name was?
This is Frank.
You sound just like Jay Noon.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, that was it. And but basically, I don't call myself a libertarian. I'm basically a minarchist because I'm also a pragmatist. I think you gotta baby steps and reduce government, and then hopefully someday you can get to the point where you can make the jump. But at this point, I just try to reduce harm in my life, and either through voting or just how I live my life.
Thank you for sharing that story. And I don't know if you heard the update on what happened to that property. They developed the thing.
They got abandoned, right?
Pfizer moved in, and then they moved out a few years later. So the whole thing.
Right. They tore these people's houses down for nothing. And I don't know for sure, but that development sat empty after Pfizer left for a long time.
Yeah,
I don't know if it still is.
That's what I was curious about. I was trying to find, okay, what's the status? Because Pfizer, the headlines about Pfizer leaving was in 2009. So it's been more than a decade since Pfizer took off from this deal that they had. That the city was like, we're going to make so much tax revenue, and their big anchor
loss
is gone. So really just a slap. I mean, just the ultimate slap in the face, insult to injury. I hope these people left New London and didn't just move across town. Just these abusive scum that run the city. Frank, was there anything else you wanted to share?
Thanks.
Okay, we're losing your signal anyway. Thanks for the call, man. I appreciate it. The number here is 603-283-6160. If you guys know the latest on what's happened to that particular piece of property, is it still just sitting empty? Is there anything in that's renting this particular complex, this corporate structure that they created there in New London? I would love to know.
And to be fair, I knew the story about Lauren Canario. I didn't know what the Supreme Court thing was, and I didn't know what the name of the town was, but I knew her story and that she had gone out there and helped protest this eminent domain thing. I don't know. Maybe there are some, decent uses for eminent domain. I don't believe there are, but some of the least innocuous, they're not always as simple as it seems. Like the roundabout that's getting built here in Keene, it seems like it's a good thing, right? It serves the public and it allows traffic to get through a lot faster. Yes, but there is this one convenience store gas station there that only has that little section as its entrance and exit, and it lost one of those entrances.
Did it?
Yes. They may have fixed it since.
I feel like it seems like it's okay. Like when I've been going by it, I actually wondered myself the other day, I was like, did they really chop up that guy's property? And looking at it, it seems like you can get in fine, but I don't know.
I don't know. The property owner seemed to be unhappy about it.
He wasn't happy about it. No doubt about it.
And what may seem like a good idea to us actually could have done significant harm to his business.
It could have.
Right, and I know that same area, and they could have cut into the parking lot of the drugstore that was across the street. That's really what they wanted to do, but they just pick what's convenient for them.
Sure.
And I'm going to talk about auction theory here in a moment because that it solves a lot of the eminent domain problem.
All right, let's get into that coming up here. Plus the price caps, we didn't really talk enough about that. I think we should jump back into that. The prison situation in El Salvador and more coming up in Hour 3.
Free Talk Live.
When you call a government bureaucracy, more often than not, the person who you talk to will not know the answer to your question, but they'll tell you they think they know who the person is that has the answer, and they will pass the buck to that other person, and if they happen to pick up the phone, they'll usually pass on the buck, or you'll leave a voicemail and never hear back from anybody.
Right. I mean, I wasn't being rude at the PSA at all. The third person I talked to, she was getting pretty hot on the collar. It's like, what are you being so angry for? I'm just asking regular questions any person would.
Well, she's probably upset that she had to pick up her phone and talk to one of the little peons like you.
She's probably annoyed at her underlings who actually gave you her phone number and let you get through to her.
Yeah, that's probably the case. She just wants to play solitaire, and you interrupted her game, or she just wants to surf on the internet, and you just ruined her day.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. At least 24 Republicans say they'll vote against the U.S. debt ceiling deal agreed between President Joe Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Conservative lawmakers in the House of Representatives say they'll oppose the deal when it comes up for vote on Wednesday evening, as it fails to significantly cut government spending. The Treasury has warned the U.S. will run out of money if a deal is not passed by June the 5th. House Speaker Republican Kevin McCarthy has defended the deal that he struck with the White House.
We're pulling money back from the hardworking taxpayers that are going to China. Are they opposed to work requirements for welfare? Are we concerned about, for the first time, to be able to change the environmental review?
The trial is underway for the man accused of killing 11 worshippers at the Tree of Life synagogue in the U.S. city of Pittsburgh. The shooting in 2018 was the deadliest anti-Semitic attack in U.S. history. Robert Bowers could face the death penalty if convicted of some of the 63 counts he faces. FSN's Sally Patterson has more.
It's been more than 4 years since a man walked into the Tree of Life synagogue in Squirrel Hill, Pittsburgh on Shabbat, the Jewish holy day. The shooter killed 11 people and wounded 6 others, among them several Holocaust survivors. Authorities allege the suspect, Robert Bowers, made anti-Semitic comments at the scene of the attack, as well as on social media. Bowers has pleaded not guilty. His offer to plead guilty in exchange for a life sentence was denied by federal prosecutors. The suspect's lawyers argue he has schizophrenia and brain impairments. The trial is expected to last 2 months.
Disgraced tech founder Elizabeth Holmes has begun her 11-year prison sentence, she reported to authorities earlier on Tuesday. Last year, Holmes was convicted of 4 counts of defrauding investors in her blood testing company, Theranos. Former US First Lady Rosalind Carter has been diagnosed with dementia. In a statement, her family said she continues to live at home with her husband, former President Jimmy Carter, and that both are enjoying time with family in Georgia. FSN's Tony Waterman has more.
The Carter Center didn't provide details about Mrs. Carter's condition, but said by sharing the news, the family hoped to increase important conversations at kitchen tables and in doctors' offices around the country. Mrs. Carter has been a leading advocate for mental health for much of her life. An estimated 6 million Americans suffer from dementia. Her family says she is living happily at home with her husband, former President Jimmy Carter, who entered home hospice care in February.
U.S. travel this Memorial Day weekend topped pre-pandemic levels, with 9.8 million people taking flights during the long weekend. The 4-day period, Friday through Monday, marks the unofficial start of the busy summer travel season. From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is settling in for another 5 years in power after winning Sunday's runoff in the country's election. But the second round of voting revealed a Turkey deeply divided. The president beat his opponent by just 4 percentage points, an outcome that a few months ago would have been unthinkable. What's the outlook? Kim Sengupta is World Affairs Editor for Britain's independent newspaper.
It means more of the same, really, except with an even more authoritarian president in his third decade in power, 25 years altogether. The fact is that despite the opposition coming to within 4% of beating him, he won. And if you listen to his message after his victory, it is very combative. It's quite aggressive towards certain sections of the community, the LGBTQ community, also the politicized Kurdish community, and basically showing absolutely no sense of compromise to the opposition. So I think you're going to see an even more emboldened President Erdogan.
And that will cause angst in a variety of global capitals. There are still, though, continuing questions about President Erdogan's health. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
And the main news again, at least 24 Republicans say they'll vote against the US debt ceiling deal agreed between President Joe Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. The trial is underway for the man accused of killing 11 worshippers at the Tree of Life synagogue in Pittsburgh. Disgraced tech founder Elizabeth Holmes has begun her 11-year prison sentence, and former US First Lady Rosalind Carter has been diagnosed with dementia. There's more from us on Twitter at Feature Story. That's Feature Story News. Nick Harper reporting.
It's The Onion Radio News. God loses his decision-making coin. This is Doyle Redland reporting. The Lord God has confirmed that he has misplaced his special decision-making coin. The coin, a relatively unremarkable 1972 nickel, has been used almost daily by the Supreme Being for over 4 billion years for the purpose of determining everything from the direction of the wind to the outcome of history. The visibly distraught God added,
I have no idea where I put it. I remember flipping it last night for a couple in Monroe, Michigan, who were trying to conceive a child, but I haven't seen it since.
God also said he hopes to locate the coin before 7:15 Thursday morning when United Flight 251 takes off from Seattle with actress Dixie Carter on board. Doyle Redland for The Onion Radio News, online at theonion.com.
This is The Onion News Network.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. You can join the show and you can bring up anything you want as we kick off the third hour. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And joining you here tonight, we've got Ian.
Aria.
And Mark.
We were talking about some of the international news, including coming up El Salvador, the latest on their torturous prison experience that they've been subjecting tens of thousands of people to without any kind of criminal charges.
Yeah, thankfully I don't have to, I'm going to prison next month, less than 30 days out at this point. Thankfully,
it could be
nothing
worse.
like the El Salvador. I would just kill myself if I was going to El Salvador's prisons.
It looks awful.
Yeah, you might as well just kill yourself.
We can talk more about that coming up here. Let's go to the phones. I know, Mark, you want to talk about auction theory. Have not forgotten that. We'll get into that and how that applies to things like eminent domain, or rather replacing eminent domain. But first, Sarah in New Mexico. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yes, I just want to bring up this under construction. It's a Christian alcohol drug rehab. And then, yeah, so, that you guys are talking about jail time, and, the thing is most of these people are court-ordered. And what it is that the judges feel like this is better served than punishing criminals in jail some more. They rather prefer to put them in a Christian rehab home as prepared to letting them rot in jail. And it does make more sense because it's more of a supportive, loving environment, encouraging rather than a punishing environment.
Those are not the words I think of when I think of Christians, but go ahead.
Yeah, but it's supposed to be. I talked to the pastor. The people that run it used to be addicted to alcohol and drugs. All of these counselors were former alcoholic and that got that got better from these addictions.
And they all wanted to get better, and that's the key piece of the puzzle. The people that are being ordered into this rehab, they're never going to get better because they don't want to get better. The moment they want to get better, one of these therapy programs, one of these rehab programs will work. But until they want it, no amount of court-appointed rehab is going to do any good.
Well, I mean, out of those, it's better than being in jail. Isn't it more free? You do get to go out, and you're not in prison.
Just let them do whatever they want that's not harming anyone. Let them smoke the crack and shoot up the heroin or whatever else it is they want to do.
Yeah, so
Right.
I just think it's a better. Well, no, it's harmful. It's illegal because a lot of people have overdosed.
That's their choice, Sarah. If they want to do something that's dangerous, let them do it.
Well, it just I don't think so. You know what I mean?
Why?
Is it true that
Sarah?
in Texas,
Should it be illegal to smear yourself in cow's blood and then go swimming off the side of your boat in the Gulf of Mexico?
Well, I don't know what that's about.
Should it be illegal?
It could get you eaten by a bull shark or a tiger shark or a great white shark or
Sounds dangerous.
any variety of big things with teeth may come along, and you being soaked in cow blood, and maybe just for a really good time on a Friday, you might soak yourself in fish blood, and then jumping in the water. Is it a good idea? I'm going to go ahead and say it's not, and I don't support it.
It's not a good idea.
Yeah, it's a bad idea, but it shouldn't be illegal.
Okay, people do wind up in jail. Not only do they do drugs and get drunk, they wind up fighting other people. They become violent.
Yeah, that's not true of everybody who uses drugs.
Plus, it would just be an argument for not putting them in jail.
Well, if you're going to be violent with somebody, then, there's a good argument to separate that person from the people that they're being violent with, or if they're, continuing to have a problem with hurting people, then there's an argument to separate them permanently from other human beings, I think.
Yeah.
But the average drug user isn't necessarily a violent person, Sarah. Most of them just want to get high.
Well, the thing is that the wind up do get in jail that need all these programs is because they're like, well, my excuse was, well, I was doing all these horrible things because I was drunk. I was in drugs. I can't remember nothing. That's their excuse.
So because you can't handle your drugs, everybody else needs to be punished.
I just have to write down.
They go to jail because they're caught doing stupid things, and they're like, "Well, I was on drugs. I didn't mean to do it."
No, a lot of times people go to jail for drugs because they happen to get pulled over, and the drugs happen to get found in their car, even though they themselves weren't doing anything stupid in that moment. Besides maybe letting the police search their car.
What were they doing that was stupid?
Speeding, running the red light. That's how they get pulled over.
No one said they were speeding or running a red light. Sarah, you don't drive, so you don't know, but I have literally been pulled over for nothing. On one of these occasions, I was told my blinker was blinking too quickly. I had the officer on video saying that.
Well, but I commend these Christian homes because a lot of these people do wind up in jail and drugs because they come from a unknown.
So just to be clear, though, Sarah, you're saying you want to force drug users into the Christian drug houses for rehabilitation rather than put them in jail? Is that what you're saying?
Right, keeping them longer in jail, it's further punishment. You'd rather be in an environment that gives you support and encouragement.
I will say that as far as, choices for forcing people to do things, it's probably a better option to not put these people in jail, but you're still forcing them to do something against their will, Sarah, and I think, Ari, you were pointing out that generally doesn't have the effect that you're hoping that it's going to have. When you force someone into treatment who isn't ready for it, they don't appreciate it. And in fact, in a lot of cases, what you'll actually see happen, Sarah, is they'll ruin it for the people that are actually there seeking treatment, for the people that are there who want to be there. if you bring in a bunch of people who are like, screw this, I hate, this nonsense, go drugs or whatever, and they're not ready to be rehabilitated, then they're going to actually make the experience worse for the people that are trying to get help. Why would you want to do that to those people?
Well, the whole thing about the Christian base, the faith base, is that there's something out beside yourself that's going to help you.
Sarah, did you hear anything that Ian said?
No, she doesn't have an actual conversation. Thank you for the call tonight, Sarah.
Just once, it would have been nice if she had addressed what you said or countered it instead of just moving on to how much she loves Jesus or whatever it was she was saying.
Look, I'm as against doing mind-altering substances as the next guy. But what I would say is that if you want people to get the best result out of incarceration, your best bet is to leave them alone, because the system simply can never figure out the right way to incarcerate somebody. It's not possible. You're not going to catch them at the right times, whereas a person just doing their own thing, they'll figure it out.
I'm looking for updates in this case out of Kelo, and I found one. Actually, I found two. I found one from 2015 where they were talking about building a memorial park. The city of New London talking about building a memorial park honoring the victims of their own eminent domain process.
No, they're not.
That's according to Ilya Somin, who wrote for the Volko conspiracy at the Washington Post in 2015. This is a Washington Post story.
So they wanted to make a memorial for the people who lost their homes for their boondoggle?
That's what at least somebody proposed. I don't know if it ended up happening, but
I mean, that's not the worst idea I've ever heard. It's just surprising.
I think I misunderstood.
Closest thing I've ever heard the government come to saying I'm sorry.
Sorry, yeah. I guess I misunderstood what had happened there. I thought they had built a facility and Pfizer left. But no, apparently they never even got that far. According to this story, although the land was originally condemned for the purposes of promoting so-called economic development, the poorly designed original development plan and a number of later proposals fell through. The condemned property lies empty to this day. This was 2015, used only by feral cats. So I guess Pfizer had just said they would occupy the property, but it never ended up getting constructed because of government boondoggle, bureaucracy, and just general incompetency.
Good Lord. I didn't think that story could get worse. A memorial is the least they could do. But instead of doing that memorial, give all of that money that you were going to spend on that stupid memorial to the people, rebuild their houses the best you can, and give it back.
So interestingly, this same guy, Ilya Somin, wrote an article within the last month. This was published on the 6th of this month.
Okay.
Update from Reason.com. Also, the Volko conspiracy. I'm not sure what that is. I know we've heard of that. You've mentioned it before, right, Mark?
Yeah, it's a blog site.
Well, they're apparently being carried by Reason now. So,
good for them.
Oh, here's what it stands for. Mostly law professors, sometimes contrarian, often libertarian, always independent. Anyway, Ilya Somin writes an update here saying that a new development project may finally build new housing on property whose condemnation for the economic development was upheld by the Supreme Court in the 2005 decision. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about Kelo versus the City of New London, the 5-4 decision by the Supreme Court in which the justices ruled that the condemnation of homes for so-called private economic development is permissible under the Takings Clause of the Fifth Amendment for eminent domain, and which only allows takings for a public use. Notoriously, the development project that supposedly justified the condemnations fell through, and nothing was actually built on the property where those homes previously stood. So they tore them down, they got rid of these people, they threw them out.
So in theory, those homes could be standing there, and these people could still be living in them.
Yes.
So they pulled the trigger before they loaded the gun, so to speak.
Basically. Since the last homeowners were forced out and their homes torn down, the only regular users of the condemned land were a colony of feral cats. That may now be in the process of changing, While I missed the news at the time, in January, the Renaissance City Development Association, which is the private nonprofit development firm formerly known as the New London Development Corporation, which took ownership of the property after it was taken by eminent domain. And whenever you hear one of these New London Development Corporation, Monadnock here in this area of New Hampshire has its own development corporation, it's always like the buddies of the city.
Oh, yeah.
It's the city government people who they can't legally do it themselves as the city or something, so they make their own little corporation to funnel money into, and
they get their brother to do it,
right.
and their sister-in-law is the secretary there, and
so
it's always a sweet little deal.
Yeah, so apparently the newly renamed New London Development Corporation, the Renaissance City Development Association, sold the condemned land to a different developer, which may plan to build new housing on it, according to the New London Day newspaper back in January.
So who's going to own these houses? Are they just going to rent them?
Don't know. Parcels were labeled sold at $500,000 apparently.
Oh, so they sold this property to private individuals?
The property has been sold by the New London Development Corporation.
So they're back where they started, except the land and houses will be owned by different people?
It's not clear. The corporation has got it right now, but apparently C3 was one of the parcels that were sold for $500,000. And 4A was sold for $1. These are the former sites of the residential properties condemned in the Kelo litigation. Suzette Kelo's famous Little Pink House, which became a nationally known symbol in the case, was on property 4A, which was sold for $1. I wonder what that's all about. A later story...
Maybe they sold it to her?
It sounds like there's a story there.
Yeah, a later story published in February provides additional information, including that the low price of 4A was because of the, quote, cost of remediating the remaining contamination of soil and groundwater.
Well, there was a story that somebody might contaminate, their site in order to make things inhospitable. And I wouldn't blame anyone who did just such a thing.
No doubt. He says he hasn't been able to find any further information on
what could be used to contaminate it like that?
Some kind of chemical.
Motor oil.
Oh, okay.
The project is not listed on the company's website. The new owner is called RJ Development. And they describe another project in the area. RJ Development did not return contact, apparently, before he went to press. Since 2005, several efforts to redevelop the land have fallen through. He says hopefully this one will succeed. However, it certainly will not vindicate the Kelo condemnations. The new development initiative is obviously different from the badly misconceived plan that led to the use of eminent domain over 20 years ago. Moreover, by the time any construction is completed, the land will have lain unused for nearly 20 years. From the standpoint of promoting development, this has been an enormous waste. And he says the region...
And the destruction of American rights.
Right, because this Supreme Court case stands, and so any other city, quote unquote, which is just a group of strangers that use violence against other people, any so-called city or town or whatever, or state, can now use this Supreme Court case to justify going in and taking anyone's property they want to. All they have to do is say, well, we'll get more tax dollars from the thing that we think will be built here once we take your property from you, so therefore it's completely legal.
They can literally take your
property. This situation did cause several states to come down and say, hey, look, we're passing laws that say this is not possible here.
Which is good.
So anyway, he's got a little bit more, but Mark, let's talk about this idea, this auction theory. What could a corporation that they had their eyes on this property, let's pretend like all the homes are still there, the corporation wants to develop something they think's going to be better. What would they have to do to come in and use this auction theory that you're talking about in a marketplace to accomplish their goal without using force?
Instead of going to the government, which shouldn't have the power of eminent domain. Now, the caller called in, I can't remember his name, but he said that he can see eminent domain in certain circumstances. I've said the same thing on these airwaves in the past. And somebody sent me a little link to auction theory. And I read the whole thing because, you know what? I'm not perfect and I can be wrong. Now, I know you don't hear talk show hosts say this very often. So I read the whole thing, and I really had to grok it. It wasn't the easiest. This was written by college professors for college students in order to be unaccessible to the rest of us. And this auction theory basically goes, let's talk about putting a road in, because that's a little easier for me.
Okay.
So you got point A. The road needs to go from point A to point B. And the shortest route between point A and point B is a straight line. But we all know roads don't generally go through straight lines. Some neighborhoods that they've pre-planned out or whatever, but generally they don't. So what you do is you take, say, 3 paths from point A to point B, paths of least resistance, and you go along each path talking to everybody who's in the properties along that path. And you say to them, all right, we're building a road, and if we'd like to offer you this for your property, and if everybody along this route takes this offer, then we'll give you this. And then you get them to sign a piece of paper. Now, what this does is it stops that situation for that one lone holdout, because the one lone holdout isn't going to get what they want. They're just going to hold up the process for everybody. And maybe their neighbors are like, hey, sure would love to sell for this price. It looks good. And obviously, the longer the route is, the less likely this works. But presumably, you have more options with a longer route. So ultimately, you can not go through the government, not spend the money on the graft and the kickbacks, and just give that money to the homeowners, offer that money to the homeowners. And if they can all get together and agree, we're going to sell for this price, then they'll do it. Now, you'll probably pay a bit more for this property than it's worth, but it won't be 100% more. It'll just be a little bit more, because in theory, each one of these groups is competing against the other one.
Just to clarify what you said here, so you've got the straight route, the shortest route, but then they'll have alternatives, right? Because if there is a holdout in there, they have to have 2-3 different other options, right? And then do they offer all 3 of them? Let's say they have 3 potential routes. One's the shortest, and then 2 are longer. They go different directions. Do they make the offers all at the same time, or do they try the first route first and see if they get it? If not, then they go to routes 2 and 3, or do you know?
The way it was presented to me, and I'm sure that the marketplace can come up with better auction theory than the way it was presented to me 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But the way it was presented to me is you just whip out these 3 offers to these 3 different groups, and that's that. So for instance, in Keene, when they're putting in the roundabout there on the corner of what is it? Is that Marlboro and
no, it's Winchester and
Winchester?
Doesn't matter where it is.
And Key, thank you. They've got a gas station there, they got a drugstore there, they got like a dental office there, and they've got like a T-Mobile, a building with a T-Mobile in it. And they just offer each one of those corner properties whatever, 50,000, 500,000, whatever they're going to offer for the one, and see who wants it.
That makes sense.
And the one who takes it, that's where you lean the circle into.
Right. Yeah, makes total sense. If you want to comment, you can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. Turns out there are voluntary options and solutions.
Yeah. Let's say that, for instance, the circle needs to cross 3 properties, and there's no way to do it. It can be more or less on 3 properties, but it has to go across 3 properties. You just present 3 different options to the 3 different property owners and say, all right, in this case, you get $10,000, and you get $100,000, and you get $25,000. Or another circumstance is you get this and that, and then you just see who signs what first. And the first one who's got a signature on this is the one that I'm going to take, or whatever criteria it is you've got in place.
Let's go to the phones here. We've got David Butt on the line in New Mexico. You're on Free Talk Live.
What'd you call me?
Mr. Butt.
Mr. Butt? Yeah.
Oh, yes, Mr. Butt. Yes, Mr. Butt. Thank you very much.
What's on your mind?
I had forgotten my true identity. First of all, before I get to my point, you said you had a gentleman that called in earlier talking about Kosovo. That, sir, is no gentleman. That's Chuckles the Clown from Longview, Washington. So,
okay.
isn't that right, Chuckle?
What were you calling about tonight?
I was calling about fact, logic, reason, deduction, and we'll do this in a fun way so nobody gets their feelings hurt.
Oh, good.
When you had referred to me in derogatory terms, Arya, or critical terms, we'll say, Arya and Ian. First of all, you've heard of the chicken and the egg theory, right?
Sure.
Okay. So, did it occur to you when you labeled me that
are you still calling in about something that happened in the past? Really? It's just not fun. He said this was going to be fun.
I don't know, man. It's been amusing so far.
Are you having fun? If you're having fun, I will put him on hold.
It may be worth it.
All right. We'll put him on hold here. More with Mr. Butt coming up here in moments. He's butthurt apparently tonight about something, and we're going to continue. You can share your thoughts as well. Free Talk Live.
Hey, you are going to love the movie Victimless Crime Spree. It's hilarious, heartwarming, and carries a ton of inspiring freedom messages. Feeling down about the lack of liberty in your life? You need to put on this film with some friends and have a good laugh. It's a true story about me and my friends in New Hampshire living free, singing, dancing, and getting arrested. Of course, it's all on video, and the bad guys, the cops, judges, bailiffs, and sheriffs, they all play their part like it's out of a movie or something. You would think we scripted the whole thing, but it's real life. Go ahead and have a watch, and if it's been a while, have another look. I guarantee you'll notice things now that you didn't notice before. And the best part is that you're going to walk away feeling a renewed sense of your own power. You are the master of your destiny, and you will be free in your lifetime. Victimless Crime Spree.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. At least 24 Republicans say they'll vote against the U.S. debt ceiling deal agreed between President Joe Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Conservative lawmakers in the House of Representatives say they'll oppose the deal when it comes up for vote on Wednesday evening, as it fails to significantly cut government spending. The Treasury has warned the U.S. will run out of money if a deal is not passed by June the 5th. House Speaker Republican Kevin McCarthy has defended the deal that he struck with the White House.
We're pulling money back from the hardworking taxpayers that are going to China. Are they opposed to work requirements for welfare? Are we concerned about, for the first time, to be able to change the environmental review?
The trial is underway for the man accused of killing 11 worshippers at the Tree of Life synagogue in the U.S. city of Pittsburgh. The shooting in 2018 was the deadliest anti-Semitic attack in U.S. history. Robert Bowers could face the death penalty if convicted of some of the 63 counts he faces. FSN's Sally Patterson has more.
It's been more than 4 years since a man walked into the Tree of Life synagogue in Squirrel Hill, Pittsburgh on Shabbat, the Jewish holy day. The shooter killed 11 people and wounded 6 others, among them several Holocaust survivors. Authorities allege the suspect, Robert Bowers, made anti-Semitic comments at the scene of the attack, as well as on social media. Bowers has pleaded not guilty. His offer to plead guilty in exchange for a life sentence was denied by federal prosecutors. The suspect's lawyers argue he has schizophrenia and brain impairments. The trial is expected to last 2 months.
Disgraced tech founder Elizabeth Holmes has begun her 11-year prison sentence, she reported to authorities earlier on Tuesday. Last year, Holmes was convicted of 4 counts of defrauding investors in her blood testing company, Theranos. Former US First Lady Rosalind Carter has been diagnosed with dementia. In a statement, her family said she continues to live at home with her husband, former President Jimmy Carter, and that both are enjoying time with family in Georgia. FSN's Tony Waterman has more.
The Carter Center didn't provide details about Mrs. Carter's condition, but said by sharing the news, the family hoped to increase important conversations at kitchen tables and in doctors' offices around the country. Mrs. Carter has been a leading advocate for mental health for much of her life. An estimated 6 million Americans suffer from dementia. Her family says she is living happily at home with her husband, former President Jimmy Carter, who entered home hospice care in February.
US travel this Memorial Day weekend topped pre-pandemic levels, with 9.8 million people taking flights during the long weekend. The 4-day period, Friday through Monday, marks the unofficial start of the busy summer travel season. From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. You can join the show. We got time for you. You can dial in now, 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Ian, Aria, Mark here with you tonight. You can join us online anytime you want. Head over to freetalklive.com and enjoy the features that we have for you there. You can join us online, and those things are like archives go back for years. There's ways to interact with other Free Talk Live listeners there. And also I want to say thanks to Mark Warden over at the Porcupine Real Estate, where they're doing some cool seminars or webinars online that you can join. And you can learn about some of the amazing things and the success stories that we've had happening here in New Hampshire, as thousands of liberty-oriented activists have been moving here over the last couple of decades, and still more are coming in every month. There's new people moving in all across the state, and many of those people have used Porcupine Real Estate to secure housing, not just buying housing, but they also can help you get connected with some rentals if you just want to, land in a rental and kind of check things out. Very, very helpful folks over there. But they've got topics they're going to be covering like gun freedoms, medical freedom, political freedom victories, best practices on moving to the Free State, and finding housing. You can get signed up. They are free to attend. All you got to do is just register, and we've got a website that'll take you right there. Just go to move.freetalklive.com. That'll forward you right over to the Porcupine Real Estate sign-up page at move.freetalklive.com. Get signed up there, and you can visit their YouTube channel, which is called Porcupine Real Estate, to see videos from their past presentations. We've got Mr. Butt on the line, and he's a little butthurt tonight. You're back on Free Talk Live. Is that cat okay?
That's my pussycat telling you what she thinks of you.
Is that a real cat? 'Cause that's a pretty good sound effect if not.
That's a real cat. And so is that one, and 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 that one.
Somebody loves him.
What were you calling about tonight?
Nobody, not even the cat loves me, man. Even though if he didn't, nobody loved me. Nobody loved me. I can't get no love, man. And so, first of all, stop talking about Kosovo because you don't know what you're talking about. But so when
we didn't say we knew what we were talking about, we said
I think we were very clear. We did not know what we were talking about.
We were reading a news article, and nothing should be believed when it comes to war, as far as news is concerned.
Right, but you were giving an opinion, and your opinion was all wrong. So,
what's the opinion? And what's wrong?
My opinion was people should stop fighting. No. I think that's a good opinion.
That's a good opinion. I agree with that opinion. So back to Mr. Butt hurt. So Mr. Butt is hurt because So Ian, when you labeled Mr. Butt hurt some critical term, is there any legitimacy to your comment?
I don't know. You haven't told us what you're upset about yet. But it sounded like you were going to complain about some previous call. You said we called you a name. So
no. We're not complaining about previous calls. We're having this discussion of fact, reason, logic, deduction, and we're just using previous events to apply those tools.
Okay, why don't you go ahead with what you were going to say?
Okay, so there's two main points here. One, when, and any of you, in particular, Arya and Ian, labeled Mr. Butt hurt in critical terms, like a-hole, is there any legitimacy to those comments on your part?
We're talking about something that happened 2 weeks ago now, right?
Yeah, I didn't remember it a week ago, man.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter when it happened. We're talking about, remember, fact, reason, logic, deduction, and we're just using a scenario.
Is it possible that in the past you, sir, have behaved as an a-hole on the air?
So you're answering a question with a question. So let me re-ask the question. Is there any legitimacy when you made those comments? Is there any legitimacy to what you said, or is it all just
Yes, it was completely legitimate. What we said about you was correct and accurate.
At one time. And there's some times when you call and you're informative and you're interesting, and sometimes you call in and you sound like you got a little stick up your what.
Right. So what you just said that there is legitimacy to the things that you had said about me. So
the things that I don't even remember what they were, by the way.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter for our little.
It seems to
scenario
matter
here.
to you.
No. We're talking about process here. We're not talking about specific events.
Okay.
So now, in analyzing process,
How about trying the process of pulling that stick out, David?
When we'll deal with humor later.
All right, we'll just leave it inserted.
When people label you folks in any sort of critical terms, is there also legitimacy to their feelings?
There may be.
David, I get insulted on a daily basis, man. I don't care.
There may be. So there's a possibility that there never is, because there only may be. Is that what you're saying, Ian?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I think you're getting to the point of absurdity here, but what's the point you're trying to make?
No, I'm just using the English language exactly to its definition of the words. Okay, so
people can have whatever feelings they want to have.
And are they legitimate?
I don't know what that means. I mean, to them, I suppose.
Are they accurate?
Are they necessary? Maybe not.
Let's get out of
feelings are not and have never been an accurate gauge of truth. You know that, right? That's why people feeling like the Earth is flat or whatever doesn't really mean anything.
Okay,
feelings are not a valid pathway to truth.
Thank you very much, Arya. So let's use what you just said, Arya. So when you label me in critical terms, is that a feeling that you're labeling me with, or what is it?
I don't think I don't remember what I labeled you with, so I can't
brought
answer
it up.
that.
It's the word a-hole. He's upset about that.
I wouldn't have said that on the air.
No,
I think I referred to it.
My term. Let's use my terminology. Critical terms.
Well, you're very butthurt. That would be one I would go with. That's an observation, by the way.
Okay, so it's an observation, not a feeling. Is that correct, Arya?
I don't know, and I don't really care.
Well,
what's the point you're trying to make exactly? What is the point you're driving at?
You're like Elmer Fudd trying to catch Bugs Bunny in a word game, and like, dude, I'm just so not interested.
I'm just trying to hold you accountable to the English language.
No, you're trying to hunt the wascally wabbit.
Thanks for the call tonight.
I can't see anything more in what he's doing than that. I mean, he's like Elmer Fudd at this point. He's like, that gosh darn wabbit.
Yeah. I held on to him, and then you said you weren't interested, so he's gone.
I appreciate it.
The number here is 603.
It seemed interesting at first.
Yeah.
And then it was just, more of the same. It's
word games.
Yeah.
603-283-6160. Look, if he's upset still that somebody, I think it was me, referred to him as an a-hole at times
2
on
weeks
Free
ago.
Talk Live a couple of weeks ago, then you got to get over things, dude. I mean, I've said you can be interesting, you can be informative. He's been a lot of things over the years that he's been calling this show virtually every single night. And like I said earlier in the show tonight, when we were talking about good shows versus bad shows, you do 300 plus shows a year, you're going to have some bad ones in you. There's no doubt about it. Similarly, if you call every night, some calls are going to be better than others. And if you're upset about something, I don't know, maybe something happened in your life, and you bring that into the table, your frustration, maybe because we know he's had some bad court experiences before, and we've talked about a lot of those things. We've heard his story, and they're terrible. A lot of the things that have happened,
tragic.
And you bring that on the air with you, and you're upset about that, and it comes out on the air, and it comes out as hostility against the people on the air. You can't blame the people on the air who might turn back around and give a little bit back to you. So if you don't want to be called an a-hole, try not to be one.
Yeah, I'm almost tempted to listen to this episode from 2 weeks ago just for that one segment. But I don't care that much, and only David cares that much. Yeah. Like, really, David, I don't know how you can live your life being as sensitive as you are. I commented on Luke Rudowski's Twitter today.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I saw that, yeah.
I know him, right? I've met him in real life. We've hung out. And I was like, hey, man, you seem to be fostering a lot of hate in your comments here, and that may be something worth thinking about.
This was in regards to some kind of
some sort of
gay
LGBT thing. Yeah. And like immediately, within an hour, had like 50 comments from people calling me a groomer, or you're a man anyway, you're ugly, blah, blah, blah. No one cares what you think, freaking. It was just filled with that. Like, if I was David, well, how could David even exist with that kind of negativity?
No, that's why he probably lives out in the middle of nowhere.
That's probably exactly why. But like, David, you gotta stop being such a little girl, man.
By the way, I thought it was an interesting comment you made, because I think it's a concern that so many of these libertarian people who should know better are pandering to conservatives. And I think that's what you were suggesting that Luke was.
I think so, because yeah, sure, you want more followers. There's a reason that even though he knows me, he didn't come in the comment section. Like, hey guys, you guys are way off base here. I mean, and it's because he doesn't want to antagonize. Somebody clicked that follow button, and that feels good. And the more he can appeal to more conservatives, the more they'll click that follow button.
These guys too, right? He's selling T-shirts.
And it's like, yeah, but at this point, man, you're monetizing hate.
Yeah, that's not good.
And you're better than that. I know you're better than that.
Well, I can't comment on the Luke Radowski thing, but I can say that within the liberty movement, there are conservatives parading around as libertarians, but there are also people that are just coming to these ideas at different times. So, I can understand somebody who says, I just can't live with the idea of a man wearing a skirt or whatever. It was foisted upon me in the form of Aria and actually friends from before that. And
you, sir, voluntarily put a skirt and a wig on, I believe, many years ago when you were Woe Manwich.
I did dress in drag one time to prove a point, which was that trans women shouldn't be in the Shrine of Female Listeners. That's true. Free Talk Live webpage that we have long since retired because it just doesn't. It's just not appropriate any longer.
We used to have a page back when we were a local show, and for some limited amount of time when we were a syndicated show, which featured photos of alleged female listeners of the show.
Okay.
I borrowed it from Phil Hendry a long time ago.
For the thirsty listeners, right?
Yep, that was it. And I had all along said that the only requirement for membership of the Shrine of Female Listeners is 2 X chromosomes. But
you don't know the chromosomal makeup of any of them.
No, that is true. That is true.
Right. But I made a guess in one circumstance. It was a bit on a show. I hope that the person who now I hope in retrospect that person understands it was a bit on a show, but at the time that was my stance.
I don't think was it even ever brought, was it even an issue? I think you had just brought it up, right? Or did somebody try to get in who was trans?
It was an issue. You put a trans woman in the Shrine of Female Listeners.
I don't even remember.
Right. It has been a very long time. This was 2005.
But Mark, the reason I point out the chromosome thing is because that's something I encounter all the time from people. It's like, a woman is someone with 2 X chromosomes, and they don't know anyone's chromosomal. They don't even know their own chromosomal makeup. They're just assuming that they know, and then they're forcing everyone into 1 or 2 categories based on their assumption, and that's certifiably insane. They're assuming things about 100% of the population and then drawing hard limits on what is and isn't real based on that assumption. I can't imagine anything crazier than that. I can imagine plenty of things crazier than that, but that's still completely crazy.
Well, I haven't looked at the genetic studies as to how many men have XY chromosomes and how many women have XX chromosomes. And I do know that there's chromosomal variation in so much as XXY, XYY, and a few things like that.
Yeah, it's up to 2% known, isn't it?
I don't know the answer to that. If 2% is a pretty good deviation, but it also says that 49% of the human population is XX and 49% is XY.
Yeah, but the reason that's significant is because no one's claiming that trans represent a huge portion of the population. It's usually less than 1%. And if I recall correctly, I don't remember this myself because I'm not a biologist. I'm not that interested in the subject, but I'm pretty sure the chromosomal variance is 2% of the population. There's some variance of just not XY or XX.
I brought it up to show that I'd had growth in this particular area and that different people will have growth at different rates at different times, and that I'm hoping for that growth. Now, I can also say I haven't reached the end if the end is 49 different genders and, having to use whatever pronouns anyone says. I mean, I'm just too much of a libertarian. You can F off if you think I'm just going to, spend my time trying to memorize pronouns for different people.
Yeah,
but
I'm gonna pass on that one too.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, especially if you're talking about using the plural to describe the singular. That is the last hill upon which I will die.
And you're seeing it now, by the way, in mainstream media coverage. They'll refer to people as they in mainstream. People writing for like major publications are using the word they to describe non-binary types of people. And
I get doing it for a vague unknown person, right? That's standard in literature. If you don't know the genders of the person that you're referring to, use they. Even if it's only one person.
It's standard to a point, right? It's standard until you don't use it. Because language has to have a standard, otherwise it fails at its original purpose. And if its purpose is to communicate that there is one person about which you're talking, and you continue to use they and them to describe one person without any kind of disambiguation involved there, then you're creating a lot more confusion than you're solving.
Yeah,
now there are instances when you say that person over there, I think they may be on fire, right? Like there's an instance where you can use the plural as singular, and it does happen.
Yeah.
But the suggestion, and I'm not saying you're doing it, but I'm arguing with the imaginary trans lunatic out here. The suggestion that somehow I can say, here's my friend, they have 6 fingers. Don't touch them on one of the fingers, it's hurt, right? Like you just keep on, what are you talking? Are we talking about a group? Like if they come in the middle of the conversation, especially on say radio, where people come in the middle of the conversation all the time, it is just a death knell for communication. You're just not doing it successfully. So again, final hill upon which I will die.
I mean, I agree with that. I just don't know that I consider it a hill that I would be willing to die on. I'm with you, right? And, I'll fight on that hill, but I'm not willing to die on that particular hill.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about something else. So we talked earlier in the show about these soft price caps that they're talking with the grocery stores in the UK. The Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, is having discussions, apparently, with these grocery stores. Apparently, they're trying to put in a system that is similar to what is already in place in France, where the country's major retailers have agreed, supposedly voluntarily, to charge the, quote, lowest possible amount, unquote, for some essential food products.
How is this not price gouging or price fixing, or what is it when companies do this?
It's
and
a price control.
And it's bad.
It's a price control when it's mandatory, right? If it's a voluntary agreement, it's like not quite to that level.
Yeah, but it's bad. If we had, CVS and Walgreens and every other drug company, pharmacy sitting around going, okay, we're going to charge $5 per aspirin. That's bad. That cartelization.
Collusion, yeah. Okay.
Collusion. There's a word for it, and I can't think of it. That's what they're doing here. That's still bad. You can't have all the businesses cooperating and saying, this is what we're going to charge.
Well, the proposal is for a French-style agreement on food price caps here, according to the story at The Telegraph. Has been quietly discussed among industry figures in the last 2 weeks. In France, the supermarkets that signed up to the deal, so again, doesn't sound like they all agreed to it because it is quote-unquote voluntary, each identified items in their own shops that will be subject to price freezes or reductions. In many cases, their own brand items, so the private label stuff, were selected on the basis that retailers found it easiest to control their costs. But one source briefed on the plan warned that it would be anti-market and could harm smaller retailers who would lose business to the supermarkets offering cut-price items.
Well, yeah, if you don't make your own cereal, then you can't easily control the cost of the cereal that you're selling. You're at the mercy of the distributors.
The source added, quote, it's very easy to point the finger at retailers and say they're making a fortune, but some of the margins they're operating at are not that big. It's quite tight. And that's what we were talking about earlier with the margins at these grocery stores being usually around 2 to 3%.
That's true of most business. What do these people think people are making in profits? Like 40, 50%? I'd be, if you have a business that makes 10% in profit, sign me up. I'll run one of those.
The source
when you're talking about businesses that sell big ticket items and very few of them, they're much more likely to make a large amount of money on each one of those items. I'm not talking about cars, but I am sort of talking about, say, wooden sheds or something like that. Even jewelry. It used to be It's been some time, but it used to be that they got a keystone on jewelry. I don't know what it is like now. I'm not looking into that. In fact, best I can tell, they're growing diamonds and labs, and jewelry is about ready to tank.
So what we're still not too clear on here is what exactly the carrot is in this particular case, because the government thugs in the UK are acting like this is a voluntary choice. So, what are they enticing these supermarkets with exactly? The source.
I mean, this is also just another step towards socialism, right? Why even bother with it at this point? Just have the government take over the grocery stores and have government brand cereal, government brand milk, government brand eggs.
Well, we know how that goes.
This goes the same way.
Well, I don't know. It would be interesting to see how things have been going in France. I'm not sure how long. Okay, here it is. So the French government's deal with retailers was announced in March. So this is by no means an established program. We have not had enough time to really see what may result from these price controls in the long term. Now, as
the same thing that always results from price controls.
Shortages. Yes, I understand what you're saying. However, in this, and I'm not defending this, okay? Right. I'm just trying to think out loud about it, is if they're just asking these companies to price at the lowest possible price, they're not losing money, right? Because they're not going to do that unless they are doing it as a loss leader. But generally, a company is not going to price below their cost. So they're just asking them to trim the profits that they're making on these items. That's not pricing below cost. And so while it may result in still these things selling quicker and possible shortages, it's not going to be the same thing as them coming in like during a hurricane and saying, you have to sell batteries at the normal price when they're worth 10 times as much because of the demand, which definitely those things cause instantaneous shortages. So yes, maybe these will cause shortages, but it may take some time before they start showing themselves. People aren't in France. It doesn't sound like people are beating each other up to go and get the slightly lower cost loaf of bread.
But how simple do these people think economics really is, that the government can just say, okay, $1 per stick of butter, that's fine, and it not affect people's wages, people's hours, and then the stuff that they need to buy, those people who stock the butter, now they have to work fewer hours because the company's making less to pay them.
That's a good point.
They have to spend less money elsewhere, which gives you less money to spend elsewhere, and this is this vicious, complicated cycle.
And that suggests that they'll even have the opportunity to get butter. In all likelihood, the manufacturer of butter is going to sell butter someplace that is not where the price control is, presuming the price control matters at all. If the price control matters at all, it's only going to benefit the business, because, and this is what people don't get, no one would put price controls in to benefit the business. Are you kidding? These big corporations? But the butter manufacturer isn't going to send it where the price is artificially low. He's only going to send it where it's artificially high. So if you price butter at $1 and the market says it's 79 cents, but this area of the country or this area of the world has to sell it at $1, well, then that's where the butter is going to go.
The French government deal has now, it sounds like they're pulling out the stick, okay? So according to this story here, Mr. Le Maire, this is the finance minister in France, Bruno Le Maire, said the initiative was being extended for another quarter, with food inflation running at a record 15%. He later
totally unrelated, by the way, to the price controls and the everything else
it has
they're
to do
doing.
with them printing money. He later threatened to raise taxes on retailers to, quote, recover profits unfairly made on the back of consumers, unquote, if they refuse to lower prices further. So now we get a taste of what kind of negotiating tactics
So it's not voluntary anymore.
Yeah, well, it's still quote unquote voluntary, but now we know
if
why.
you don't volunteer to do this, I'm going to rob you.
Right.
Yeah, that's classic
We're going to rob
government.
you harder. They're already getting
fair
robbed.
point.
The government never had any intention of being voluntary. That's not the way they operate.
Nope.
Nothing they do is voluntary.
I would warn the people of the United Kingdom, however much you may think this is a good idea, even though they're pitching it as voluntary now, where, as you can see in France, right there, it doesn't stay voluntary law.
No, and it ain't bringing the food prices down. They're saying 15% food inflation, right? So out of time tonight. Back tomorrow. You can join us online. In the meantime, over at freetalklive.com and check out our chat server at chat.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. In addition to being one of the world's first cryptocurrencies, Dash was the first crypto project to have a decentralized autonomous organization that to this day continues to improve and promote Dash. Every month, 10% of the mining rewards go into a treasury. Anyone with one Dash to spend can put forward a proposal to the Dash masternodes to vote on. The masternodes vet the proposals and decide which ones move forward and are funded by the Treasury. In fact, that's exactly how we got this sponsorship. Nowadays, DAOs are plentiful, but Dash paved the way by doing it first, nearly a decade ago. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at dash.org. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit dash.org to learn about Dash.